Good evening. I'll call to order this August 5th, 2025 Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission special meeting. We will start with our meeting minutes from July 22nd and July 29th.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes,
I just have one quick correction.
go ahead.
Okay. On the meeting minutes for July 29th, inadvertently, we left out one, we bumped a motion by accident. So after our zoning regulation amendment, that should be the motion made by Mr. Levy and seconded by Mr. Randolph and members present to table that item to 8.5. And then after the next item for 421 Black Rock Turnpike, we just need to insert some information that Attorney Bellis presented opening remarks with his traffic consultant, and then that was continued to 8.12. And if you would prefer to vote on these next meeting, we can do that also.
Let's see where we go with it first. First, we have Mr. Harrison is not here today with a family death, unfortunately. My best to her family. We need somebody from an alternate standing in, so who's up for that?
And also for Commissioner Ford.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Ford's not here either.
I believe it is Commissioner Delgado and Commissioner Siebert, although Commissioner Collins is joining us remotely as well.
So Commissioners Siebert and Delgado, you're up to speed? Right. And I am as well. I think I was out the 22nd. No, the 29th, I wasn't here.
I was out the 22nd.
Yeah. I was out to speed. All right, and I was out the 29th and I'm up to speed. Okay. So if I can have a motion with let's see if we can amend the minutes as described by Harrigan. Can I have a motion to accept with the amendment described? Jean or Corsillo?
Move to accept with the amendment as described.
Is there a second? I believe he seconds. All right, does everybody understand the minutes as were drafted for the amendment to, was it July 29th?
That's correct.
As described by Ms. Harrigan a second ago. Does anybody need that repeated? Any other comment? Commissioner Corsello, anything further?
Nope.
Commissioner Levy?
Nothing further.
Comments or questions from the commission? We'll put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Next item is compliance. 561 Post Road, compliance application of Kin Properties, Inc. for a change of use from retail to sports training facility, D1 training design in the design commercial district zone.
Do you want to go ahead and put up the site plan? I can come over here, but
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harrigan.
but I don't really have written comments. I'll just ad lib. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emmeline Harrigan, Planning Director for the record. The property at 561 Post Road is the building that presently contains a liquor store, as well as the former mattress store that is located generally across from the McDonald's on the Post Road. An applicant is looking to convert the prior mattress store into a training facility. With that, what they're also asking to do is they will retain the building entrance on the front facade, but what they'd like to do is make the rear facade their primary entrance, as they do training for a lot of kids organizations. And the majority of the parking is actually located to the rear of the building if you've ever utilized that rear portion. So in the back, there's a loading dock area, and they would convert that to a secondary entrance. That way it'll be connected to the bigger portion of the parking supply on site. This is before you as a compliance because we do consider it to be a change in use. They have provided a narrative that indicates that most of their parking is driven by 50-minute classes that they provide. And classes are only scheduled on the hour, so they feel like that 10-minute transition time is going to be adequate for them to be able to accommodate the 10 or so folks who they have in a class at one time, whether those are driven by parents or carpooled or even individuals, should they do adult classes during the day as well. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Let's get a motion on the table. I have a motion, Commissioner Levy.
Move to approve the change of use and also to convert the back entryway.
Is there a second? Commissioner Braun? Okay. Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, it'll be a nice addition. And I think it makes sense to have the entry in the back where I think 20 of the 40 parking spots are, and it'll be safer for kids. So I would approve it.
The
Commissioner
parking,
Braun?
yeah,
Go ahead.
applies with parking and everything else, so I'm.
Commissioner Randolph?
I see a picture of a sign. Is that sign compliant, is that grandfathered, or is that a compliant sign?
For the which facade?
There's
The
a,
primary building
there's a-
facade?
there's a pediment sign in front. There's a
The
picture of-
monument sign is, yes, the monument sign is pre-existing.
Right, but it's being substantially reused and reconfigured. Can we ask the landlord to bring it to compliance?
Not for a sign face change, we cannot.
So there's, even though they're substantially changing the sign, we can't get them to,
Not for changing the face out, that doesn't meet that doesn't trigger a new sign.
it's just for clarification, the legal height of that sign should be what, 15?
I believe it's not to exceed 12 feet,
12 feet?
so it is taller than that,
That was
correct?
Like 25 feet-ish.
No, I didn't actually measure it. I'm not sure whether it indicates it on the survey. Does it, John? And to be honest, because it's just a face change, I also didn't check the record to see whether there had been a variance granted for that as well.
Yeah, understood. So could we ask the landlord to, because I see right now that new sign is extending above where it once was, it looks like. Looking at D1 tenant panel PDF.
They shouldn't be extending the signage. The signage should be right on the existing box that's there.
Going to be extended.
Check out the elevation image. It looks like it's just replacing.
I think that's where the mattress signage was.
Yeah, I'm just looking, see if you see the left side of the sign, it looks like that white piece is extending above what it once was.
I think that's just based on their Photoshop, but we'll
Current-
confirm.
Liquor store down.
I mean, that's not
That's
gonna
my
affect.
understanding was that they were just switching out just the plex for the sign.
Yeah, so if we could ask. there.
I'm happy to research the file to see whether or not, whether that sign, given its location, was given some sort of variance, but I'm happy to research that. You don't have to vote on this tonight. I'm happy to bring that back and then you guys can make a decision at the next meeting.
I defer to the rest of the commission if, on what they want to do, but it's just our signs are not. We have many that aren't compliant. This looks like one of them, so.
I mean, they certainly can't extend the non-compliance regardless of what we do today. It either stays the same and they just input what you want into what's existing. And if they're doing that, then that's fine, I guess. If they're extending it, what we do today won't stop us from challenging that, I think, right?
Well, I mean, because it was my understanding that they're just replacing the existing face on an existing sign. We allow that routinely.
Yeah.
And so I didn't research the file to see whether there
Why
was a
don't we just-
variance issued, but I certainly can.
You want to do a condition of approval that the sign simply replace the conformancy is not extended? Is that,
I think that would,
I don't know whether that would kill the lease, to be honest. Because I can't condition something if a variance has been granted, so I would prefer.
I'm just trying to say what we can do to keep whatever currently existing in place, and there is somehow they're going outside of what's currently there, then shouldn't be.
Right,
Yeah,
So-
I'm looking at the street view. It looks like the mattress firm sign was the one that was not compliant. That they added.
But I don't know that it's not compliant, that it hasn't been granted a variance.
Gotcha.
So I can't, if they've been granted a variance for that sign based on the position and the odd shape of the property, I can't. That goes with the property, so I
Just a
can't.
Condition of approval of the, whatever sign they'll talk with staff on. Is that something that's simple enough?
Simply that they not expand the size of the existing sign.
It looks like it's the same. I'm looking at the old sign. Looks like it's the same as the old
All
sign.
right,
Yeah,
so-
that the existing sign not be made any more non-conforming.
Can we just ask them nicely if they could make the sign compliant?
Can ask
Well,
them anything.
You can ask them anything, yeah, but let's at least maybe a condition of approval that sign stays as it is with non-conformities not extended, or whatever the proper term is.
Thank you for indulging me.
So add that as a condition. Is that, who
That's
made the
fine.
motion? You made the motion?
Mhm.
Commissioner Braun, is that okay with you?
Yep.
Does anybody object to that? Not hearing anything, so motion's amended. Anything further? Put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 7 hands, so it passes unanimously. All right. We next turn to our public hearing items. I'll call the first 3 quick announcement. Zoning regulation amendment, application of Pekarsky Investments to establish a new section 40 for the Beach Road Housing Zone. On both items 2 and 3, 812, 820 Reef Road and 155 Forest Avenue, application of Pekarsky Investments to establish a Reef Road housing zone on land presently zoned Residence B, zoning compliance and coastal site plan application of Pekarsky Investments for a 45-unit residential development pursuant to section 830G of the general statutes in Residence B zone. Now, we need to finish the hearing tonight. We need to close the hearing tonight. Which I think right now we've left off with just your rebuttal.
Correct.
So we'll have your rebuttal, and I'll say, just for everybody's sake, commission and public as well. Not only do we have to close this hearing tonight, but we have the next 3 items. Next 3 items regarding Stilson Road. That needs to be heard and closed tonight as well by statute. Otherwise, I think they're granted. They're approved by operation of law, so. Just for everybody's sake, again, we need to finish items 1 through 3 and 4 through 6 tonight, these hearings, which I think we can do. We have rebuttal for the first 3 items from Attorney Russo. And then I know we left off with public hearing, and we'll talk about Stilson in a second, so. Just want to be clear on that, so, Attorney Russo.
Chair Commissioners, Chris Russo with the Russo and Rizio LLC offices at 10 Sasko Hill Road in Fairfield, here on behalf of the applicant. So we're going to respond to the comments that were made. We'll go through our experts first, have them respond to their specific comments, and then I'll close up at the end. So to start, I'm going to have Steve Mitchell, as our traffic engineer, address the comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Steve Mitchell with Mitchell Traffic Engineering. And again, I'm going to keep my comments as brief as possible. I know you have another long night ahead of you, so. But I'm going to respond to the various comments and a few questions that were brought up. These are not in any particular order. They're just in the order that I copied them down. In our presentation, we talked about the sight line being adequate from the driveway, that it meets state requirements. And that was questioned, I believe, by members of the public. And I just want to reiterate, sightlines were measured and documented in the field. They were verified by a licensed land surveyor, checked against state standards, and there was no issue with sightline at that location. As presented at the hearing, we recognized that the July traffic counts that we did are not necessarily representative of student traffic in the area. However, whenever we count, we're counting at a specific point in time. We're counting at a specific month, a specific week. and it never represents the entire year or possibilities throughout the year. So we have ways of adjusting. And in this case, as we mentioned last time, we first of all added the bus traffic in that we had actual numbers for, so that was relatively easy to do. And then we looked back at historic counts that were done on Reef Road by the state various different times and added an additional 17% to the peak hour counts to reflect those higher numbers that were counted. And those counts were done early in December of 2022. So those did in fact include student counts. But the net result of those additions were taking our counts and increasing them by between 40 and 50% to represent these higher volumes. And we are very confident that this is the proper way to do this and that these do reflect student traffic and higher volumes that might be on Reef Road at other times of the year. Also, as noted in the presentation, there is a possibility, and I know Attorney Russo is going to talk about this later, about the possibility of students renting some of these apartments. The question, of course, is how many they would rent, and we have concluded that they cannot reasonably rent any of the restricted apartments, so they would have to only rent the non-affordable housing if possible. So we looked at three different scenarios, one with no students in the building, one with half of the available apartments rented by students, and one with all of the available apartment rented by students. And we think all of the apartments is a little far-fetched, but we looked at that as a possible worst case. So if we ended up with half of the students renting the apartments, we have calculated that we would require between 61 and 69 vehicles parked at worst case. So in worst case, we would have 5 vehicles above what is on site for parking. And those 5 vehicles would have to park on the street. Street parking is allowed. It is allowed on the west side of Reef Road, basically from this building all the way to the north. Prohibited on the east side by the park, but there is plenty of parking available if that was the case. In the far extreme, if every non-affordable unit was rented by students, then we would find that we need a total of between 70 and 73 parking spaces for all of the vehicles. And again, that would be an overflow of 9 vehicles. And so we would have 9 vehicles that would have to find street parking. Now, there's one thing I want to point out when I look at this. We typically look at worst case analysis. We do that. However, looking at a situation where every apartment has been rented by students, we're also taking a situation where every apartment is rented. And that is not usually the case. Industry standard is that most buildings run at about a 90% rental rate. So we are not taking that into account. That's only 2 apartments. I mean, it's not a lot, but we're not taking that into account. We're assuming those are occupied. It is also assuming that every person in every apartment is home. No one is on vacation. No one is visiting someone in New Jersey. No student is doing an all-night study session somewhere, which I know I did in college many times before exams. Everyone is on the site, and in that case, that worst case, we're talking about only having to park 9 vehicles off-site. So we are very, very comfortable in saying that parking on the site is sufficient for all reasonable expectation use of this site. Third, it was brought up that there were possibly some additional intersections that we did not analyze. At the very beginning of any traffic study, what we do is we decide how large a study area we're looking at. That's the first thing we do. And that's basically associated with how much traffic we're generating. And a general rule of thumb is that if we are generating more than 100 vehicles through an intersection, then we should analyze it, absolutely. If we're generating more than 50 cars on a left turn somewhere, then we should analyze that intersection for sure. But in this case, if we look at the traffic flowing north from the site, we have a morning peak hour and an afternoon peak hour of only 35 vehicles. We simply don't have enough traffic generated to expand this study area in all directions. There's virtually no instance where traffic generation that low will cause an impact. Now, that's not saying that every other intersection is working great. It may not be, there may be problems. There's probably problems on Post Road at certain times, but our impact on that will not be something that you can measure. It won't be something we're looking into. There wasn't a mention of flood evacuation issues, that we're going to somehow bog down Reef Road and everyone will get stuck in the floods. I think, once again, looking at the actual generation from this building, looking at 45 total units versus all of the units that are to the south of here and would possibly coming up Reef Road, it is not a reasonable position to say that we are going to somehow change the entire course of the way the traffic flows. And I would conclude to say that in general, many of the comments, specifically the public comments, dealt with a picture that was being drawn that this large development is presenting an overwhelming amount of traffic, and that the Reef Road is going to be completely bogged down in all of these cars, and it's going to be a difficult situation. So I want to again give you, based on facts, what we see on Reef Road. Typically, a 2-lane road like Reef Road in an urban area like this where the speeds are low can handle about 2,000 vehicles in the peak hours total, both directions. Okay, and that's not an exact number that you can calculate a better exact number, but that's about what we look at as an average capacity of the roadway. If you get more than that on the roadway, there's a very good chance you're going to have congestion. But if it's less than that, it should be operating well. Now recall, we calculated level of service A, which is the best level of service. So where are we? Well, I'll remind you that we found about a peak hour of about 500 vehicles total in both directions, in the morning peak and in the afternoon peak. And that's after we expanded it from the county. So we're at a quarter of what we could possibly handle on that road. It is not nearly at capacity. It is not nearly overwhelmed. And 35 cars to 50 cars added to that road is not going to impact that. It's a tiny percentage of the available capacity, 1 or 2%. So our analysis and our conclusion at the time was that we are not impacting the operations in the area. We have used time-tested techniques that are used by traffic engineers all over the United States. We have not uncovered anything that would lead us to believe that there will be any harm to the safety of the public. And we see that this will operate smoothly and efficiently on the roadway when all is said and done. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Go ahead, Commissioner Braun, Levy, and then we'll work our way down.
Was this in the area of inundation during Hurricane Sandy?
I'm the traffic engineer, but anecdotally, I have heard it was, but that's.
So to me, the evacuation would be everybody wants to leave, not just 35 cars.
Right.
If there's a Hurricane Sandy coming, that means, so DEP has been warning us lately, sea level is going to rise 20 inches by 2050, another 25 years from now. So you're adding sort of a density of population down in the area that's subject to sea level rise. Is there a concern about that?
No, I think that, again, it's based on numbers. The numbers of, first of all, every human in the building isn't going to come flying out of the building at one time, right? And I think There are evacuation plans, and I believe those are gonna be talked about after I'm done, and that's probably better handled at that point.
What's
But just
the,
on the numbers of people added to the overall population of the area, it's a tiny percent, so it should not be an issue.
what's the number of bedrooms that's in development?
I have it, hold on. 81 bedrooms total.
You're taking a couple.
And actually, that includes it counts as a bedroom in a studio, even though it doesn't have
Are there
a.
dens as well, in addition to bedrooms, or?
Sir, no.
No. So 81 people, 81 or more, that's a lot of population density being added.
Anything else?
So the traffic study that the roadway can handle it. There's also no evidence that's been submitted that during Hurricane Sandy or other flood event, that traffic exiting road was an issue.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes, when you're calculating the parking potential overflow, how many people per two-bedroom and one-bedroom apartment were you assuming?
Yeah, it was actually, it was not based on people per unit. It was based on parking generation per bedroom. And again, if you recall, when I was discussing during the original traffic study, ITE does have a big database on traffic generation. They have an identical big database on parking generation. And again, it's based on actual parking measurements. So they've measured single-family houses, they've measured multifamily houses, they've measured student, they've measured high-density housing, they've measured affordable housing. And they have all of these measurements. So what I did is I took those pieces of the database and put them together in the different combinations of student housing, regular housing, affordable housing, and I did that, made a matrix of it.
So assuming worst-case scenario that every two-bedroom had four occupants and every single bedroom had two occupants, would that impact your analysis of the potential parking overflow?
I don't have a specific answer to that because again, I used a database that measured student parking. It didn't identify that. It assumed that in a complex where there was students, that they would all act in a similar way.
Would that be a dormitory as opposed to an apartment building, or?
These were separate, these were not on campus. These were off-campus facilities.
Thank you.
Commissioner Randolph?
Related follow-up question. So how many affordable units do we have?
14.
So if we take 14, assume 1.5, it gives us about 20 parking spaces for the
Yeah,
affordable.
the actual number for affordable runs between 1 and 1.2
So just 1.5 is what we've been using.
more.
And then to add, I've done the math here for most of the questions. So that leaves about 31 and a half. I just did 30%. That leaves us 126 spaces for 4. And so if we took 1.5 times the 13 and a half, and that gives us 20. So that would give us, worst case, just answering Mr. Levy's question, the need for 146 spaces. Because there's up to 5 unrelated people who can live in a unit. Mr. Levy asked if there were 4, so that would be 4 times, I'd use 31. That would give us about 126 spaces for the students and 20 spaces for the affordable, giving us 146 spaces. So for a parking plan, where could you've got, I think you said 73 spaces?
Yeah. 64 spaces.
64 spaces. Okay, so you got 64 spaces. The math's easy. Where are those other 80 cars going to be accommodated?
Well, my answer to that is that you have done some arithmetic there. You have just drawn a picture of a building that completely defies hundreds of studies that were done by ITE.
No, but
I can't say that that can't happen, but it hasn't happened in many, many studies. So I'm not sure how to answer that question. It's, when ITE studies actual physical student buildings and determines how many how many cars are actually parked. I mean, that's data, that's real data, that is not something conjectural. And I don't know how to answer that any better than that.
And that's applying a standard that's just not.
Are you an expert on
But
that?
I'm answering, I'm responding to the question. That's applying a standard to an affordable housing project that isn't applied to any other type of application. Because essentially you would have to go to every retail use, look at the maximum capacity of the building and say every single person there was gonna have a car. So I think that is unfairly holding this development to a standard that is not applied to other uses and applications.
Okay, so just out of everybody on this commission, I think I'm the most aligned with the ITE. But I am also see in this instance circumstances that are different from a typical student housing. One, there's zero public transportation. This student housing is in close proximity to campus, walkable, correct?
I would say that is, and I don't know the answer to that, but I would say that makes logical sense, yes.
So in this case, the student housing ratio is not applicable because this is not like other student housing at Sacred Heart. The student housing is across the street. This is most off-campus student housing is in close proximity. This one is not, and there's no public transportation. And as has been pointed out, most Fairfield U students own a car, not finished. So I think your ITE ratio for student housing here, while I'm not doubting it in general, under these circumstances, a better approach would be a parking plan, not an ITE ratio to address the need. So just let me repeat my math, just for the record. And by the way, I was asked, I have a master's degree in architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm a registered architect, and my master's thesis in architecture was on dormitories. I did dormitories. So the square footage of 520 square feet, 2-bedroom, which is what you have here, is about half. I'm just getting this on the record, half of what 2 bedrooms are, other commercial 2-bedrooms. So it is probable, and you guys admitted tonight, that this is likely to be student housing. So
We didn't say that. He analyzed it because you requested that he analyze it.
well,
But there's no provision for this to be student housing, and dormitory is not listed as a use under the
so
proposal.
as a condition of approval, can we prohibit?
I don't think that's legal.
I didn't finish what I was asking. You just said no. Can I ask my question before you say no? Can we put as a condition, no more than 2 occupants per unit?
No, I don't.
One occupant per bedroom.
Again, I think that's putting a restriction on this development that isn't put on other developments to restrict the number of a number of persons within an apartment unit. And I don't think it's legal to exclude somebody who might be a student.
So our concern is parking. And the parking here, from an intuitive standpoint, is grossly insufficient. Grossly. If 4 students can live in these locations by law right now, that is very likely to generate the need for 4 parking spaces, and which would give us a need for about 146 spaces, not the 69 you have here. And I'm not talking about the need for affordable housing. I'm talking about the need for parking to accommodate the affordable housing. We need affordable housing, not denying the 8030G, but this is the site, there's too much building on the site and not enough for the parking. And there's no public, if you had public transportation, you had if you had a parking plan, that would be a logical explanation, but I haven't seen a parking plan or an explanation of how you're likely to accommodate up to 4 students per 2-bedroom unit. If you could address that, that would be helpful.
Well, Commissioner, not to be combative, you have asked a number of times if the folks at this side of the table are experts in that field or not. I am an expert as a traffic engineer. And I believe there is sufficient parking on this site unless there is some radically unusual, incomprehensible situation. It is not, this is, you have first of all assumed that it's going to be 100% student housing, which is not likely. Second, you have assumed that there'll be 4 students in every one of these 2-bedroom apartments. That is probably not likely because they're not very large apartments. You have then, as I said before, we're doing this count on the basis that everybody is in the building every night. And that's not very likely. So I disagree with your analysis. And I disagree as a professional who does this. And I believe there can be times when there will be an overflow of parking, but there is sufficient parking on the street. And it is not going to be hundreds of cars. It's going to be a small number of you. That's my opinion, my professional opinion.
And I'd also just like to state for the record that there's no evidence that's been submitted with regards to that particular standard that you're citing that would require a calculation that high for the proposed use.
If it's the same topic, I
No,
think
it's a-
we've addressed it, but
Well,
go
it's a
ahead.
separate question. So I'm not questioning your expertise as a traffic engineer. How many parking studies have you done for Government?
On campus, off, when I hear dormitory, I
I'm
assume that's
sorry,
off,
for
on campus.
off-campus housing of similar use buildings, not apartment buildings, but for student housing, how many have you done before? Is it?
10 maybe,
10?
perhaps? I mean, it's,
Were the
been doing this for a long time.
were the buildings similarly distant from the university?
I'm going to say generally speaking, no. I'd say building, a building, again, and you're characterizing it as a student parking building. I don't believe it is that. But I was surprised to hear from anecdotally from the public that there's a lot of student housing in this area, specifically because it is far away from the campus. I don't, it wouldn't be my first choice of where to have student housing. But I'm not going to argue with the people. I didn't go around and canvass each resident in the area and say, are you a student or not?
Commissioner Braun?
So we have the ITE, but the ITE is not specific to Fairfield or our specific situation. It has general information supplied by people in the field. So it is not customized to what is actually on the ground in Fairfield. And I think that's what you've heard testimony about, that
Well-
students tend to have their own cars. They tend to like to live on the beach. There's a huge amount of students that live down by the beach.
Well, my answer to that is that what you're suggesting is a problem with IT is actually its best resource, because it doesn't, if I went out and counted, and it's hard to apply it to residential, but let's pick something else. Let's say you were having a new retail store of some kind and you wanted to see what kind of traffic it's going to generate. I can go into ITE that has several thousand studies of retail stores, or I can go down the block and count a retail store. Statistically, which one will be better? ITE, absolutely. So you're right. It doesn't take oddities into account, but it does. I mean, if the database is big enough, it does get some of this. It does have it in it. Okay.
So our job is to not approve something that could lead to a public safety issue. To me, every single person that has a car, if they think a hurricane's coming, they're gonna try to get out right then and there, get their car out of there. That to me would create congestion and all kinds of problems, not just for them, but for first responders, or if there's a medical emergency or anything like that. Not only that, you're gonna already have people probably parked up and down the road, which narrows the road and makes it even more difficult. But I do have another question. is there a legal reason why students cannot live in the affordable units? Is that, did I hear you right? That
I'm gonna go through that, why I think
Okay.
it would be difficult. Yeah, I was,
there's no legal reason they cannot.
there's no, like, it's not impossible.
If they qualify financially,
But there's a lot that goes into that, and so that's what I was gonna run through.
Let's go through.
I was gonna let Steve
okay.
finish, but
Let's move on then. I think we're all set with the traffic, right?
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
okay. Next, Jim Jameson should be on via Zoom. He's our architect. And he was gonna. Comments. And then I was, after he speaks, I was gonna address the afford for students.
You should be okay to go ahead and unmute itself and speak.
Jimmy there? Yeah, there he is.
Yes, I think I am here. I was unmuted and unvideoed, but now I'm here. I'd like to thank the commissioners for hearing our proposal tonight and our response to your questions from the previous nights. One of the questions came up, how are we to, meet the requirements of the flood requirements? And I think one way to do that is compare FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program compared to the current building codes in force. And, NFIP requires communities to review and determine all new construction of substantial improvements be designed and adequately anchored to prevent flotation, collapse, lateral movement, structural results from hydrostatic and hydrodynamic loads. And essentially the current codes, which is the 2021 IBC and the Connecticut 2022 state code, the requirements in association with the American Society of Civil Engineers, which is ASCE, the requirements there are stricter than the generic sort of descriptive terms of the FEMA requirements. Foundations are required to prevent flotation, collapse, and permanent movement. The geotechnical characteristics have to be investigated before a foundation is put in place. The floor loads have to resist hydrostatic and hydrodynamic loads. And requirements are much more strict than the generic description of National Flood Insurance Program. Another one is the NFIP says requires review to determine that all new construction and substantial improvements have equipment and services designed and or located, which is fairly generic. Building codes actually require us to elevate all equipment above the base lowest floor elevation and also account for any freeboard that needs to be applied. The other issues requires buildings in the AE to be elevated to or above the base flood elevation, which is just the base flood elevation. But the building codes require to have at least 1 foot of freeboard buildings that are of more significant importance. So once again, the building code is much more strict than the flood insurance program. We're providing flood openings in our building. NFIP requires only 2 opposing flood vents and with no criteria as to the size or ability of those flood vents to vent the water of a certain area. The building code actually requires flood vents based upon the square footage of the enclosed areas, and they need to be engineered to provide openings that will allow the inflow and outflow of water. We have an elevator in the building, and NFIP has no regulation specific to an elevator. However, the building code does. Elevators are required to have flood damage resistant materials. For hydraulic elevators, tanks and any of that mechanical equipment has to be elevated well above the base flood elevation. And there have to be controls on the elevators that prevent them from descending into floodwaters. So I feel that our building will be designed superior to any requirements of FEMA. And there reviewed that, and we a queen size bed in every of the 2-bedroom units, and all the singles and the studios can accommodate a king size bed.
Anybody have issues with the freezing?
Yeah, I think he was addressing a comment by Commissioner Randolph about the design of.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure that that's, if everybody's okay, otherwise let's
Can
go.
you repeat that part again, since that?
Yeah, Jim, sorry, you're breaking up. Could you repeat the part about the size of the rooms?
Yeah, the bedrooms, all the bedrooms can accommodate at least a queen size bed. And the singles and the studios can easily accommodate king size beds. So, the building is basically designed for market rate housing.
Questions, Commissioner Randolph, Braun?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, you said it's designed for market rate housing. Did you design this, the square footage of the 2 bedrooms? How does that compare to other units that are currently on the market in Fairfield that are being designed and constructed now?
We researched that, and these bedrooms are a bit smaller than a lot on the market, but within a reasonable expectation. And nationwide, apartments are being built smaller these days, mainly from an affordability standpoint to keep the rents as low as possible.
So 520 square feet is a typical size for a 2-bedroom apartment in your professional point of view?
It's atypical.
It's atypical. You're saying 520 square feet is not a typical size, it's atypical.
It's typical of what is coming on the new market across the country.
So you're saying that
It's in line with current standards, correct?
Correct.
It's in line with what is happening in the market today.
Fairfield,
Not necessarily in Fairfield, but it's coming.
but the market is Fairfield, correct? We're not comparing this to Manhattan.
Well, I mean, he made the
don't-
comparison, so I mean, I don't know.
Most of the people moving out here are from Manhattan, so they're used to units.
He did.
Okay, so when you designed this apartment, were you asked to look at it considering students as?
No, I
You
was
were not.
not. No.
Commissioner Braun?
Is the elevator then going to still be operational during a Hurricane Sandy situation if there's flooding going up above base flood elevation?
No, you're not going to use an elevator in a flood, just like you wouldn't use it in a fire emergency.
Okay. And then the handicap accessible rooms, I assume are on a level where they wouldn't have to use the elevator?
Well, you have to understand that if there's a hurricane coming, notice is given days ahead of the hurricane arriving, and people are encouraged to evacuate well before there are any flood issues. And I doubt that any handicapped people would remain in the buildings knowing that a hurricane was on the approach.
What level are the handicapped rooms on? Handicapped accessible?
Per the building code, they have to be distributed equally among the floors.
So one on how many handicapped are they? What floors are they on?
I don't recall what the requirement is, but it's probably around 20% are handicap, and certain ones have to be adaptable as well.
Spread
So how
across
many
all the
units is that?
floors.
How many handicap units is that? Because you have-
20% for it, half, it'd be nine
So you have
units.
8 or 9 handicapped rooms on all floors. And they can't get out of the building without first responders coming in and rescuing them, unless they left before.
Right, there was an evacuation order and they were evacuated. Same as
Right
would be
place.
required for any other type
Right
of.
place.
again, that would be imposing, because new construction housing in this area is elevated and the living floors are elevated. That would be, imposing a condition on the affordable development that isn't imposed on other, dwellings in the area.
But it is a safety issue. You have potentially 8 handicap units, you said?
We don't believe so, because we believe we have reasonable accommodations. And I'm going to discuss some of those that I think we agree to as a condition of approval to ensure the safety of residents during a flood
What will
event.
be the accommodation to put them all on the lower level?
To work with, it's a number that I was going to run through, but
Let's finish with the architecture so I can keep things.
Okay, the EV unit, the EV parking spaces, where are they located?
there's no.
No EV.
I think that's the engineer.
I'll let him come up.
The engineer can address that one.
Anything else for the
Know
architect?
Where the EV spaces are? or-
There are no
He's gonna-
use cases. I'll explain.
Alright.
We
Thank
can
you.
come up anyway.
That's good.
Next point.
Anything else for Mr. Jameson? Okay, I'll set with him then. Thank you, sir.
So one thing Jim discussed the affordable units a bit, and so I want to address this question about the affordable units in students. And to explain how difficult to what I think near impossible, it can't be impossible, there's always a possibility, but how difficult it would be for a student to occupy one of the affordable units. And you just have to look at the affordability plan. First, your advertisements for the affordable housing, and this is spelled out in the plan that's submitted, but your advertisements for the affordable housing cannot be directed solely at students. They are noticed in the papers. The entire public has to be able to see the advertisement. And it's first come, first serve, so you couldn't pick and choose over non-students. There's also an application process. You have to submit an income form for your family or household. So you have to list your family's anticipated income. So in the instance of a student, unless you were emancipated from your parents, you would have to include the income of your parents when you applied for an affordable housing
Maybe
unit.
not emancipated, but I assume if you're declared as a dependent.
If you're a dependent, right, so if you're, which a lot of people do, you're allowed to claim your child who's over 18 as a dependent when they are a student. If your parents, which happens a lot down in the Fairfield area, if your parents sign the lease, it would obviously have to include your parents' income. But even if they didn't, if you were still part of their household, you would have to include your parents' income. You also have to list your anticipated income. So if, for instance, the parents didn't list you as a dependent, you could not get around and say, Dad, Mom, give me a gift of 40,000 to cover my rent as a gift. You have to include that in your anticipated income. And then on top of that, the requirement would apply to each and every student. So you might have, let's say you had 2 students in a affordable unit, you would have to put student one's family income into the calculation for affordable, and you'd have to put student number 2's family in the calculation to be able to be entitled to the affordable unit. And then on top of that, it has to be your principal residence. So you would have to change your unit to basically being your principal residence. It cannot be, an affordable unit can't be like your second home. It has to be your principal residence. It's listed in the affordable plan. So I think it's extremely unlikely. Again, not impossible, because I don't think you can vote, and you can't have something to be 100% certainty not to happen. But I think it's extremely unlikely that a student could lease an affordable unit. And I said this last time, I don't know how you market a building as part student and part non-student. I think that's a very hard thing to market. I'm gonna rent these rooms to non-students, and then the non-student moves in there and they're living in an apartment building where there's seniors living in the building having parties all the time. I mean, that's not, maybe to some people it's attractive, but to me, don't think I would wanna, as a adult that's, beyond my student years, I don't think I would wanna live in a building with a bunch of seniors partying. So I think that's very difficult. But on this issue of the student housing, I'll just say again for the record, the simplest and shortest answer is our text amendment does not permit dormitories. This is multifamily housing, and I don't think this theoretical possibility is grounds to justify the denial of this application. But I wanted to address it in that.
Can you address how good the enforcement is? Because I've heard around town, people complaining that there's violations all the time. Who enforces it and how is it enforced?
Well, there's always a chance for, right, so, yeah, there's always the possibility of people violating. Like zoning reviews, I think Mark Barnhart at Economic Development also reviews it. I'm not sure, I'm not positive about that.
No one goes door to door and
But
sees.
when
who's
I've talked to Mark, my sense I got was that he reviews it, and you do have to submit. It's not like you don't have to submit information to the town, you do.
I know with most student arrangements, it's pretty loosey-goosey. I mean, you can't predict who's really gonna be there necessarily.
Right, but I guess if people got wind that students were living in the affordable units, like if someone resident in the area, they could go to the town and say, hey, has this been verified or are they violating it? And the town could look into it, just like it could enforce, any other type of restriction in its regulation. If that's it, I will turn it over to you.
The site, and then we can.
Yep.
Other things we need to discuss, but that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is David Bauer. I'm a professional engineer with Gusidis Engineering out of here in Fairfield. And I just wanted to kind of address some of the questions. In particular, there was a lot of discussion about the flood zone and the limit of moderate wave action. I got a little more background information. So is it possible to pull up the site development plan for this? And you could just go to the zoning sheet.
Mr. Mullen.
Yeah, it's not picking me up. So, as I mentioned before, the property is kind of split between two different flood zones. Both are classified as the same flood zone. It only differs in the elevation. The north side of the property is at elevation 11 in an AE zone, which is an inundation zone. And the southern side of the property is on an AE zone at elevation 13. That elevation 13 is also associated with what's called a LIMWA, a limit of moderate wave action. That's an area where waves heights there's a 1% annual chance of a wave height being in that region of 1 foot, 1.5 foot or high or lower. So if you can kind of see that line that extends from the left-hand side and then extends over to the right-hand side, where the cursor's following. The south side, the downhill side, the downside of the page, that's the area where there's a limit of moderate wave action. The major concern with those is that you're not interrupting wave flow coming in, or you're not placing any structures that aren't meant to handle that kind of wave action there. As Mr. Jameson said, the building has to meet all FEMA standards, which being in this zone, it would have to withstand all lateral and flotation forces from any kind of inundation, flood, or wave action in this area. And then on top of that, we've also worked with planning, based on planning and zoning and engineering's feedback, to ensure that we're not really changing this grade, so that we're not redirecting wave action to a different portion of the property or onto any neighboring properties where it wasn't originally going. It's all staying within our property bounds. So we're minimizing all of the impacts that we would have on any negative or any adverse impacts we would have to adjoining properties in relation to this. So as I mentioned, the building has to be constructed of a very specific set of regulations, constructed by a very specific set of regulations when you're building in a flood zone. This is in an AE zone, an inundation zone. So even with the 20-inch sea level rise that Commissioner Braun did bring up, that would bring the maximum base flood elevation to elevation 14.67, with the P&Z regulations having a requirement of 15.67 for the first floor, any living space that we need. Our building is proposed at elevation 18, so we still have an additional 2.5 feet almost of storage below even a worst case scenario for future planning. That was intentionally done, knowing that there were some of these concerns. All the utilities and the transformer in particular is going to be elevated above the base flood elevation as well. And the drainage structures that are on, if you wouldn't mind going to the next page, all the drainage structures on this page in the parking area and including the stormwater quality system are made of concrete and open to allowing waters to flow in and out of them. So there's not going to be any any issues with any kind of lateral movement. Water's gonna flow in and out of them just as it's intended to do, even during a flooding event. And they're made of concrete, so any issues of flotation, they're heavier than, they're not gonna be more buoyant than anything, so they will stay exactly where they are proposed. And then one other thing I did want to go through is some of the comments that were brought up in the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection letter. I do disagree that that building, that this construction would be in a flood zone that will increase hazards to life and property. As it currently stands, there is 4 units on the property, 2 of which are actively in the flood zone. The first floor of them is around elevation 10, which is about 3 feet inside the flood zone itself. So those buildings are even more of a danger that cause problems with hazards to life and property than the current, the building that's being proposed, which would be elevated and constructed in a manner that is intentionally done to avoid hazards to life and property. We've received similar letters from Deep in regard to the, the increase in density. And for instance, there was one in Westport that I did just a couple of years ago where they mentioned comments about having concerns over density going from a 3-bedroom house to a 4-bedroom house. If they were to be consistent with that policy, they would basically say that all the 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom houses that are currently in the flood zone are more preferable than building something that is higher density that is currently flood compliant, which is just a statement that I do not agree with on their behalf. I do believe our proposal is consistent with all the FEMA standards, and it can be developed in a manner that is not adverse impact to public health and safety. And I'd be more than happy to answer any additional questions should you have them.
Do you want just?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, the EV, yeah.
On the
So
record, yeah.
that was a comment that was addressed during the code review minutes a couple months ago. So working with the building official, he understands that because all those EV parking spaces and their actual chargers need to be above the base flood elevation, and the ground remaining very natural around elevation 5 and 6 throughout most of the site, that would mean that the EV charger would be about 7 feet in the air for the bottom of it, and then it's about 1.5 feet high. So you'd have to be about 10 feet tall in order to reach that charger to provide that. So he agreed that this is not something feasible in this particular development.
So
No,
what does that mean?
no EV.
We're not proposing
No
it.
EV at all.
No, it's the building department does not want EV because it would put the EV chargers in the flood zone.
So you can get around the requirement for EV?
If there's special considerations, because the building code will usurp that, the safety side of the building code for the EV chargers not getting flooded out and because they can cause electrical fires is more important than it is to have EV chargers available.
State regulation that you have to have it with 30 space parking lots.
I don't know exactly how it works, but there are exemptions built into that when it's not.
And this
feasible.
came during the code review.
This was something that, yeah, we discussed it at length during the code review.
So you're saying that because the lowest living level is 18 feet and that's several feet above what we call the inundation area of 15 or 16 feet.
It's currently at 13.
How, do we know how high Sandy got? Did it get that high? or-
I believe they referred to a 9-foot storm surge, which I don't believe it even reached the 100-year elevation levels at that point.
So aside from people not drowning in their bedrooms, okay, there's the other issue of every single person that has a car is gonna take their car and get out of there. And could be 150 people there. I mean, I don't know how many people are gonna be living there, but most of them are gonna have cars. That to me is the bigger issue than people like,
Yeah,
or maybe the handicapped people not being able to get out, but people not being able to get to their cars and running out to their cars and, creating pandemonium.
yeah, so that was something that was brought up, and we did kind of discuss this. I believe Attorney Russo has a pretty significant plan that we can implement as a condition of approval.
Discuss that too. So anything for the gentleman, Commissioner Randolph?
Evan?
Even.
So Evan, I appreciate your analogy for Westport where you said they're going from 2 to 3 housing units. How many people live there now?
In that particular bill, I'm not,
That one, there's one lot that's occupied. It's a
Yes, yeah.
duplex, right?
it's currently under construction still, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it will be 4 people living there.
4 people were living there currently.
Well, it's demolished. It was an abandoned building. It hadn't been inhabited for several years before.
Less than 10.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So the deep, I have worked in different states. Yeah, Deep's letter talks about the density of use being a hazard. So we're going from probably less than 10, maybe 6 to up to 80 people. on the site, right?
Yeah.
So that's the concern. It's not the law prohibiting. So 80 people, is that a significant increase in density in your mind from going from 6 to 80?
Well, I wouldn't know that it was a significant increase in density. It certainly is a significant increase in the density itself. But whether those people are currently in any additional flood hazard is, I would say that we are at a net benefit because as it is right now, there are 2 units in a flood hazard area. And after our proposal is constructed, there will be none in a flood hazard area because we are adhering to FEMA regulations.
So you're saying it's gonna be better?
I would say, yeah.
So we're
Absolutely.
going from 6 people to 80. But Deep's letter said it's really, their issue is the density in a flood prone area and the possibility to evacuate. So you're saying that's better?
My argument would be that as it stands right now, should we have another event like Sandy, there are going to be 2 units that are destroyed with potential for loss of life for people who live in there. And when this is constructed, that will no longer be the case.
And the statute says minimizing hazards to life and property, to minimize.
But the issue is evacuation. It's not.
There's nothing in the statute that says that. There's nothing in the statute that says,
I'll read the letter.
there's nothing, well, then, there's nothing, there's no statute cited in that letter that says, that state statute says there should be no increase in residential density in coastal hazard areas.
So
There's no policy paper. There's no-
This is gonna be something we need to discuss.
No,
So
I
I
know.
mean,
I'm-
let's
So
not
I'm
go
just
back
trying to
and
get
forth.
the engineer's opinion. So we're trying to interpret the letter. What's your interpretation of potential increase in residential density in the eligible area, including the applicant's subject parcel, represent a significant increased hazard to life and property? How do you interpret that sentence? Because we're reading the same thing.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what I'm saying is I don't believe that it would be an increased hazard to life and property. As Attorney Russo goes through the evacuation plans in mind everything that we have in mind, if everything is followed and it could be put as a condition of approval, if everything is followed properly, the building itself will be completely untouched by any kind of flooding event. Any residents in there, if even should they choose to stay, because we can't force people to leave, not be in any danger of being swept away by a flood because they will be significantly above any base flood elevation. The building itself will not be damaged, whereas right now 2 units are currently in the flood zone and would potentially be damaged. And the people that would live in those buildings are also not going to be in that situation anymore, should this be constructed.
Mr. Braun?
So Deep has differentiated between FEMA, which is more worried about structures, and what we do on coastal site review, which also has to do with human life and safety. And so we can consider broader issues than just what is strictly required. And to me, the broader issue is the density of population being put down there. And you have, handicapped people on all floors, perhaps. You have the need for first responders to come in and rescue people if there's a medical thing. If you have a flooding situation, you're gonna have people all going out to get their cars out of there. So I think that's what I'm thinking about. Adding this population density creates the hazard.
The cars are a separate issue, but I would ask you, would you rather, if you knew that the flood waters are gonna be around elevation 14, would you rather be standing at elevation 10 or 18?
So I lived in one house, it would be easy to get out. If you have 80 or 90 people trying to get out of a building with no elevators working, I don't know how you do that.
But the elevators wouldn't stop working until the flooding actually occurred. The evacuation orders would come several days in advance.
Human behavior doesn't work. Students, it's not gonna work like that. It's just not gonna work. You're adding.
And that's what I
the mere
said.
fact of adding all those people, to me, is the hazard.
There are provisions for this that we will
Well,
discuss.
let me ask, is there any
I'm gonna
questions?
Address this, so.
Yeah,
It's an emergency, it's an
Hold on,
emergency plan.
hold on. Any further questions for site engineer? At least on site stuff, because I mean, we're getting into stuff that I think's very policy driven, that's more for us to really decide. All right, all set, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so you had mentioned evacuation plan and condition of approval, so anything else besides that, or?
Do you mind if I run through?
Go ahead.
I will spiel.
Go ahead, you got it.
I'll get through it. It works through logically. So, commissioners, thank you for the time, in hearing this application. We are seeking a text amendment, zone change and zoning compliance, And we've submitted the necessary plans and studies in support of this application. While an 830G application, particularly the text amendment and zone change application that we've submitted, doesn't have the same requirements as standard application with regards to conformity with the POCD. I started my presentation with how I believe this application does achieve conformity with your POCD. I don't think that the two have to be mutually exclusive of each other. Your POCD discusses a goal of targeting housing for people with different incomes, for diversifying types of housing, which adding an apartment building to this area certainly does that. The POCD specifically states that apartment development should relate to facilities for shopping, transportation, school, recreation, and parks. This site is in close proximity to shopping in downtown Fairfield. It's close to transportation with the downtown train station. It's close to schools, Sherman's close by. Recreation, it's in proximity to Fairfield Beach, and parks, it's directly across from Veterans Park. Almost all these things I mentioned are straight ahead, full sidewalk and crosswalk access on dead flat roads. It couldn't be better access to this range of amenities, and it would be hard to be more centrally located to these amenities I mentioned. And then, you know, the POCD mentions the need for affordable housing. It's obviously a goal of state law. We've submitted articles and studies outlining the need. The other thing I'd say, this application, you know, came in before the moratorium, therefore it's validly before you. But I'd also say that, you know, and it's felt like this the many years leading up to that first moratorium, that the town had been racing to catch up to get the needed number of affordable units to obtain the moratorium. But the moratorium is only for 4 years. And to obtain a second moratorium, and I know the commission knows this, the town's going to have to continue creating affordable units, which are not just approved affordable units, but have received a certificate of occupancy. So we're already 4 months into it. If we took the hypothetical that this application was approved, it's probably another 6 months at least to get building permit plans, then there's financing, then it has to be built, which building in this size could be 18 to 24 months. So pretty quickly, we're gonna start getting to the end of the first moratorium deadline. So I think this application's a great start and a timely start to achieving the next moratorium. Now, on to the deep comments. Case law states, absent a quantifiable probability that a specific harm, which is demonstrated by evidence, that harm will result. And so a picture from deep that shows at a point in time there was flooding of an unknown depth for an unspecified amount during Sandy does not constitute a quantifiable probability of specific harm. Deep provided no evidence of what specific harm resulted to persons from flooding during Sandy at this location. They can't state that the building's an issue because not only do we meet today's standards, but we exceed the standards of the worst hypothetical and sea level rise that Deep cited. This property is also not in a VE zone. The building's not in the VE zone too. The Deep also provided no testimony or evidence as to what harm would be caused. It's all general, just that it has the potential to flood. The letter from Deep does not state the qualifications or expertise of the author and provides no factual evidence, reports, or studies. There's a reference to the tide gauge in Bridgeport during Sandy, and then a report on sea level rise in Connecticut from 2019 that I just mentioned, that the sea level rise may be up to 20 inches higher, which again, we've addressed with a building design that clears that height. I'm not saying there wasn't flooding during Sandy at the site, but statute and case law are clear that there has to be evidence of a quantifiable probability for a specific harm, and that is not in the record. And further on that point, this is not the first time an affordable housing development has been proposed within a flood zone. This case Glastonbury Affordable Housing Development versus it's actually the town council of Glastonbury, because at the time, Glastonbury's town council administered the zoning in Glastonbury. That was an affordable housing development. It was denied, after a finding that, and this is a quote from the council, that there would be a real flood hazard and danger to residents, the building and property. Similar to our project, the development that was proposed, they had raised the building, they had created flood storage on site. It was similar in a lot of the fact pattern. And the court found that while concern was justified, the court does not find that there is any special danger presented by potential floods to the proposed housing that would not also be presented to any other permitted uses under the zoning regulations. And this is a really key point. I started mentioning it when we were talking about the student housing, and that affordable housing can't be treated different than would other uses. It can't be, hurdles can't be put in front of it that you wouldn't also apply to other uses. Denying this application based on the fact that it's in a flood zone, but permitting another use would be applying a restriction that doesn't apply when there's other applications. I'd also note the Residence B District, which is what this property is currently located in, doesn't just permit two-family dwellings. It permits hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, schools, many population intense uses. This is something that the court opined on in the Glastonbury case I mentioned. And I think this was discussed at the last hearing. The way this deep letter reads, it's basically saying there should be no increase in residential density in a coastal zone. And we know this because also on the application for 345 Old Dam Road, which was only a couple months ago, they argued against an increase in the number of bedrooms on that property. So in my opinion, because this policy is not being held against every permitted use in the coastal zone town, it cannot be specifically targeted to apply to affordable housing. And I think in Commissioner Randolph, that's why I keep referencing the statutes that they cite in their letter. If you read the actual language of the statute that Deep is referencing, it's about protecting coastal resources, shorelands, tidal wetlands, bluffs, water dependent uses. None of that's applicable here. They're not in our sphere of influence. The one segment of the statute that they are seizing on is minimizing damage and destruction to life and property. And we're doing that by proposing a FEMA compliant application, designing the building and the site in that way. There's nothing in the statute they cite that says no more residential in a coastal flood zone and no increase in residential density in a flood zone. It's a new interpretation. One Post Road, if you remember, there was an apartment building that was approved there for 20 units that was fully within the flood zone. That comment was not made for that application. Deep didn't cite any new regulation, statute, policy paper, order from the governor, case law, or anything that this is the basis for their new interpretation. And obviously wasn't submitted in the record. Looking at the application as a whole, case law has held that theoretical possibilities or concerns are not sufficient to deny an 830G application. This site has one of the best levels of service from a traffic perspective that I've seen for an 830G development. We have demonstrated that the site has sufficient sight lines. It has access to water or sewer. We're not in a wetlands or upland review area. We're not in a historic district. We've shown that a fire truck can access the site and building. And the building is equipped with one of the most thorough sprinkler systems you can have. It's a system that was recommended to us by the fire marshal at the code review. So again, getting back to this flooding issue, I'm not saying that there's never been flooding at the site, and I understand people in this commission's concerns about those possible, isolated events. And as this commission likely knows, case law on 830G states that a commission has to look for reasonable accommodations for the development if it believes there is a health and safety issue. And luckily, I didn't come up with these ideas, but the Glastonbury case had several conditions that the applicant had offered and agreed, which the court noted as reasonable accommodations. And we would happily agree to similar accommodations to make this development as safe as possible. So I kind of going through it. broke down a flood event, and I kind of see three stages. The first is when there's no flood, and what can we do there to get ready for a flood? First, which we've done, is design a building and site to FEMA standards, and be excessive with it to make sure we're really safe. Well, we can also work with police, fire, and emergency services on a plan in the event of a flood. So we would accept a condition of approval to develop a flood safety plan with those departments. And that whoever was the administrator of the site, administrator of the affordability plan, that they would be also the administrator of this flood safety plan. And that plan would include identifying evacuation routes and possible shelter locations. And we would also agree, similar to a fire exit plan, out of a building. You see it in every apartment. There's usually on the door, there's a picture that says, go this way. We would put an evacuation plan in each unit to get everyone prepared for the storm. So the second phase is, the storm's coming. There's a storm, it's coming. We did some research and there's companies, including one called ServiceLink, which sends out alerts to tenants as a mass emergency notification of an impending flood. So if there's a National Weather Service alert, it automatically sends it to residents. And if there's an evacuation order, it automatically sends it to residents. So a landlord doesn't have to go and call every resident in the apartment building and inform them, hey, this is happening right now. It automatically sends it out. I know we talked about the warning before storms, and Sandy became a hurricane a week before it hit Connecticut. Commissioner Levy, you mentioned that there's storms that form more quickly, the 92 nor'easter. I looked that up. The National Weather Service had issued a flood alert 3 days prior to it hitting Connecticut, so it's a shortened time frame, compared to Sandy. But I still think it's enough time that, and I'll go through the rest of the things that we can implement this flood plan safely for the residents. And the service that I'm talking about, again, it was a part of this other application in Glastonbury. This service will ensure residents are notified as soon as the alert is given. So let's take the instance, an evacuation order is issued. There's two main things that you have to evacuate the site of. The first is vehicles. The second is people/pets. So for vehicles, and again, these are all conditions of approval. For vehicles, when a flood order is issued, we will notify tenants that they must remove their vehicles from the site within 24 hours or be subject to be towed. If people do not move their vehicles, we contacted a towing company that indicated they would enter into a contract with us to remove those vehicles that have not been moved. For persons and pets, we also contacted a charter bus company that would, in the instance of an evacuation order, come to the site and transport residents and pets to a designated shelter or another location, like a train station. They wanted to go take a train to somewhere they could, stay with somebody during the course of the flood. I'd be happy to add on to that, Commissioner Braun, too, that it be able to accommodate folks that are handicapped, to transport them to the shelter or to that other location. And these are all things we'd be willing to accept, entering into those contracts as a condition of approval. So then the final phase with the storm is the storm hits. And now when the operator of the apartment building receives an evacuation order, we would require that operator to tell residents they need to evacuate and exit the building. But again, I grew up down the beach. I know beach people. It's obviously possible that some residents manage to avoid that and remain. And in that instance, Jim might have actually broken up when he was talking about this, but we would agree to install a generator to keep emergency areas and common areas lit. Emergency area being like the stairwell and things like that, lit and powered for the days for those residents that don't evacuate. So they could congregate in the common areas, sleep in the common areas, and have a generator that was powering it. Again, I think these conditions are requiring something that's not required of non-affordable developments, but we have no issue agreeing to them to do anything we can to minimize any possible impacts to life and property. We think they are reasonable accommodations, but on the whole, I think this application has demonstrated that the need for public housing is not outweighed by any public interest for health and safety reasons. There's no evidence I see in the record that to any type of health and safety reason that wouldn't warrant this development. We think it's a well-designed plan, a safely designed plan, and we request your approval. I'm happy to answer any additional.
Let me ask about another condition of approval that may be different, as you said, and may not be needed. Instead of maybe no students, how about 25 and older?
An age restriction. In
Well, and I'll actually jump to that in a second, but I'll ask, let me see what.
my concern with that, and I'm thinking on the fly, but the immediate example that comes to my mind is, let's say the 2 bedrooms, single mom and her kid.
I get, no, and I.
And or divorced dad and his kid.
Leaseholder is 25.
Well, but his point, I mean, people have children at all ages, unfortunately, younger than they should or something.
Yes, yeah.
Now, take out the affordable housing stuff, the market rate 25 or older, or 23 and older, or something like that.
I think it runs into the same issue is if, which frankly happens a lot with these apartment developments. You have a divorced dad moves into a unit to be close to his child, and then some days his
No,
child.
I know, and I'm trying to balance that with, I think the concern, whether you think it's, speculative or not, I understand why you say that considering the case law, is undergraduates. So I'm trying to think of a way that we can, because whether it's, your point's well taken, I'm not sure about the legality of just targeting students. But I also acknowledge that that legality also would be tested in a court, which would require actual appeal. So if we had an agreement on something that you guys could live with, wasn't challenged in court, that's an interesting little kind of a roundabout to avoid, a testing and the challenging of it in court. So I think the concern again is undergraduates. Because I acknowledge potentially a graduate student could be there and probably be fine, because a graduate student probably on his own or one other person, and undergrads, is more professional in that respect. That's a speculation on my part, but I'll stick with it for now. If the concern is undergraduates, that is one of the main main points of opposition. Maybe it's not, you can't do students, although that could be just as simple. Is not a commitment not to have students there, but is it an age restriction? Is it something else?
I'm just also concerned, what if somebody's not a student and they're under 24 and they want to live there? And to block them out from it. And, the thing I thought achieved that was not, there's no dormitory use listed under the permitted uses. So
Yeah, I know.
I think if,
But even if there were 5 duplex, if there was like a 5-plex there, it's the same idea that you could rent a house there. I imagine all the houses down the beach aren't listed as dormitories. They're listed as whatever residences they are down there. So, part of me is thinking, yeah, the legality of it, the applicants and this commission, and I'm sure the public, is gonna be more comfortable with well, at least the commission and the opposition, the neighbors may be more comfortable with the idea that there's a restriction on students there. Now, if that's if one person challenges that in court, then, it is what it is, but I just find that a little, unlikely. But can there be just a commitment to take care of one major aspect of this opposition? And I know this is kind of the last day and I'm on a spot. I don't know if your guy is here, your client is here, guy or gal.
Yeah, I would,
even if it's a recommendation and not a condition of approval, where there's, some kind of commitment, him or her coming up. Listen, I'm trying to focus this as a true 830G, not a dormitory. My business is not to have a disruption of my other tenants, non-student tenants down there. I mean, I'm just trying to think of a way, and maybe it's a simple recommendation, which is, I say probably doesn't have much force, but what can we do if age restriction and then, play the odds, I guess,
I mean, I almost think that just a straight up condition wouldn't have much force either, because I just don't think it's legal, it's a legal provision to have on it. The concern is.
And again, that would depend on somebody challenging it, which again, I'm not exactly happy about that line of questioning, but either you or a prospective tenant challenging it. So,
Here, I would even think, like, let's say if a subsequent owner down, 10 years down the line would have the ability.
yeah, right, and that could
Would
be a
have the
risk.
ability to challenge it, even though I know they're not doing it in the applicable appeal period. If it's not a legal condition, I don't know if it's enforceable. And again, I'm trying to run through scenarios in my head where that would, I could think of two off the top of my head, but I'm a little concerned not having.
No, and I'm not, I'm kind of going out on a limb, even as an attorney, kind of suggesting that, so to speak, but I'm just trying to see if it's age restriction
Doesn't
or.
the Fair Housing Act only allow for senior age restrictions?
55.
I think that's probably true. But I mean, that's why I'm doing this very hesitantly and knowing that I'm going out on a limb here is.
Also doing as a.
No, I'm following me. I appreciate it,
I'm
but.
running those things through my head too.
Well,
And I appreciate what you're trying to achieve. I think there are things built into the application that discourage that type of mixed student, non-student housing.
I mentioned, the last time, at least on the one on Black Rock, we had a condition, I think that it was that, only the units, I don't think this applies here, because you guys don't have dens, I don't think, right?
No doubts.
So that doesn't really apply here either. Commissioner Randolph?
As a permutation of that, could we put in the deed restriction a limit on two unrelated people living in any single residence? Because there is an existing ordinance in town that says 5, and this is the issue. And despite what your architect said, studios in most of the other buildings are 610 square feet. You're 520. So if the intent is to have a small number of people in here, if you could put that in the deed restriction, that would satisfy a requirement, because the issue is there's too much density down there, according to deep, according to parking. That's the issue. It's the number of people potentially living in this location. It's not the need for affordable housing. And your team hasn't been informed that this is a student neighborhood. So you've not equipped them with the right information to design this building properly.
Well, they took in the counts from the time, and that's what he needs to do, is that take the counts from the periods when Fairfield U was in session.
So my question is, would you consider a deed restriction limiting it to 2 people? It's in the town ordinance for 5 right now, so there's legal basis for that. So limiting it to 2 would satisfy our issues.
Again, I think it's imposing a condition that is not imposed on non-affordable developments.
A 2-bedroom and,
I mean, I get in a situation where
Square feet.
I mean, but I just you can't foreclose it. That's kind of where I was going
So,
too.
so then would you consider parking requirements that said 1.25 for the 14 affordable units, 2.5 for the remaining 32 units?
Still gonna park on the street.
and then the
No,
parking
it
would be.
require you to have a parking plan that showed you where those cars would go. We're asking for a parking plan that would show where those vehicles would go, and if you didn't have a parking plan, the building would have to get smaller.
But again, there's no E30G development even that's been required, I think, to have a 2.5 unit, 2.5 spaces per unit.
But we're talking about the affordable units. or the affordable units? I'm sorry, the
The non-affordable
market rate
units.
units. We're not
Right.
talking about the affordable units, we're talking about the market rate units. Market rate units, 2.5 spaces. The affordable units would have,
Who's gonna park
It's
in-
applying a standard different than any other development that I've seen.
but we're not arguing with the affordable units, we're arguing, concerned about.
But his point is you can't separate, I mean, the building is the 830G building. You can't separate out the affordability versus the market rate stuff. That's not something we've ever done.
But the intent of the law is to provide affordable units. We're not disputing that.
Right.
Yeah,
So
but you
we're not
need-
putting a restriction on the affordable units that's unusual. We're saying 1.25, which is our town standard, a little bit less. We agree with that. It's the market rate units that we're concerned about.
But yeah, I would say, I mean, was that restriction imposed on 131 Beach Road? Was that restriction imposed on,
We're asking,
road?
we're asking for a reasonable accommodation.
But it's not an equal one. I mean, that's why it's treating, it's treating it unequally.
Anything else? Oh, Commissioner Braun, sorry.
I have three quick questions. When you talked about your condition of approval that has to do with flooding, in the phase 2, which is storm is coming,
Storm is coming, yeah.
Storm is
Very
coming.
scientific, I know.
people would have to evacuate, when would they have to evacuate?
So when an evacuation order is issued, the operator of the building, management company, whoever, would instruct residents. And we would agree to put this in the lease if that would help too. And that the lease just be subject to all the flood control measures we discussed. But that residents, when there's evacuation order,
By the
they have to
town or by the
evacuate.
state,
by the
or-
town, state, I believe those are the ones.
And would that be mandatory? So people would not be allowed to stay?
They would have to leave if,
Not
and,
just their cars, they would have to leave.
correct.
So it would be a
And they
violation.
should also remove their cars at that time. And what I saw, again, this isn't me being original, I saw this in another case. What they offered as an accommodation was, we'll tow, after 24 hours, we'll tow the cars that are remaining, and then we'll have a charter bus
Mhm.
relocate everybody who's unable, like maybe there's a situation, I don't know, somebody can't relocate themselves, they don't have a car or something like that, we'd have a charter bus company come and relocate them.
You'd have EMT workers go in and take handicapped people out, I guess, or?
I don't know if EMT workers are required to move regular
Yes, the
handicapped
elevators
people,
will
but
still-
that the elevators would still be working. And, you know, we would have a handicap accessible bus van to relocate them.
And if there's no evacuation order, obviously that wouldn't happen. Sometimes there might not be an evacuation order.
Sometimes the storm doesn't.
And then the generator, where would the generator be located? It looked as though the whole site was kind of like paved over. Where would that be
It would
located?
be on the roof. We
On the roof?
discussed it, yep.
Okay. And the overflow parking situation, my calculation is there's 81 bedrooms, 64 spaces. That's automatically a 17 overflow, assuming there's only 81 people living there. But there could be as many as 146 or 100 or more, which means that many more cars parked on the road. So that does not get solved by telling people to get their car out of the garage. There's still gonna be overflow. I figure 20 to 40 cars parked up and down the road. So that to me is still a hazardous situation with cars on the road, we're parked there, people are gonna have to, I'm picturing pandemonium, you know, people.
But again, I mean, we used ITE standards, which, you know, I mean, every application I come in, you know, and we have a traffic engineer, they use the ITE standards to, you know, they have a whole process that they run to estimate what the parking demand is. So I understand that you're looking at the number of bedrooms and calculating based on what the worst possible scenario is, but that's not how ITE standards work. And I think, you know, again, I think it's applying a standard that isn't applied to other uses. because and this is my, kind of bag of napkin like example, but if there's a retail business and it has a capacity of 200 people, say it's a retail business, it could potentially have 200 people that are allowed in there, the fire marshal shuts it down. But I don't think the ITE standards say you have to accommodate parking for the capacity of this building because 200 people can go in there. So I think we're being held to a standard that isn't being applied across other properties.
I see it as we're doing a review with the unique situation
Sure.
of our town where we have two universities, and it's likely with these tiny apartments, you're gonna have a lot of students, so that you're gonna have more people living there than possibly with the ITE, gives an average of.
Well, and I think that's what's, Steve was doing in his analysis, was looking at off-campus buildings where students live. And so he analyzed that data and he incorporated in to adjust what the possible parking counts are. And what he found was on the 50%, the 50% analysis, it was, I can't remember, 6 or 7 spaces over, and then the 100, it was like 9. It was 9 units. So, 9 spaces, which again, given the fact that there's so much on-street parking available in that area, we think that this area can accommodate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not too loud.
No, I don't know what that was. It's all right. I think we're all set. Anything further?
Nothing further. Questions? Thank you for your time, comments, consideration.
Thank you. I will close the hearing on this matter. I don't know if we'll talk, I'm not sure when this comes up. We'll probably have it up for the next meeting or next weeks out.
Sorry, let me.
I know that's something we probably need to discuss first, but
So I tentatively have this scheduled for September 2nd for deliberation and decision. But we have until November 9th. I am just,
I think leaving it the second because we have other things to discuss. Yeah, let's leave it there. So it'll first appear September 2nd for a decision. We can discuss it, we can decide then, or we can table it, but we'll discuss this in a decision-making capacity on the 2nd, September 2nd. Okay, all right, so this hearing is closed. I'm gonna turn to the next matter on Stilson.
I have a question. If we were here and we want to rebut his rebuttal, are we still allowed to send letters?
Rebuttal is the last word. Applicant gets the final word. So the hearing is clear, they'll close at this point.
I just note my objection because he presented additional people that did not speak the last time. The architect did not speak. And so there was new evidence tonight. It was not just rebuttal.
No, I would disagree with that, and the architect was not available last time, we knew about him, the materials that he discussed was in the record. So, thank you for that, but I mean, I would disagree, this is all rebuttal.
So that's it for us, right?
Everything's done for this hearing tonight.
I have no say.
Had your-
I have a letter I submitted I'd like to read.
Well, if it's been submitted, then it's part of the record, so we don't need to have it read, we don't need it read into the record, it's already.
Just have a clarification. You asked who at the town actually investigates overcrowding of the houses, and that's the health department in Sands Cleary.
Thank you. The hearing's closed. I really can't take any more comments on the matter, so I'm gonna call the next item. If anybody wants to stay, obviously they can stay, but if people are gonna go, I just wanna know that so I can give them the extra time to set up and have people clear out.
I mean, I'm gonna recuse myself from the next item, but I'll log in remote in case we reach the planning item at the end of the meeting.
I'll send you a
Okay,
text
thank
if you want.
Great. I appreciate it.
All right, so I'm just gonna call the next
Thank you.
3 items.
I got the next thing.
Mr. Chair, just, I had to mute while people were.
No, no, that's fine.
Is everybody everybody who's staying for Stilson? If you're here, if you're not staying for Stilson and want to leave, now's your opportunity. We're about to start another hearing item, so if you are not here for Stilson.
You muted still?
We are muted.
Oh, great.
Right, we are?
Muted? We're not.
Oh, we are not muted.
Okay, that's fine.
Still same thing. I live on Blackboard Turnpike.
This for you,
They,
Rebecca?
they put me in Blackboard Turnpike.
Oh, no, that
Saturday.
place is like a night.
Good luck with your problem.
To do this.
No.
Sorry. Are we unmuted? Sorry, Mr. Mullen.
We are on.
Okay, thank you. Let me call zoning regulation amendment application of Shapiro Commons LLC to establish a new section 39 for Stilson Road Housing Zone. And then 430 and 452 Stilson Road, application of Shapiro Commons LLC to establish a Stilson Road Housing Zone on land presently zoned Residence A. And compliance application of Shapiro Commons LLC for a 68-unit residential development pursuant to section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in the Residence A zone. So as I understand it, I was absent from the last meeting, but Attorney Green, you're up to bat to public comment, rebut, oppose, and your opposition comments, anything. You have the free reign, so to speak, but I understand before public had started its comments, new information was given. The public, so that nobody really had a chance to digest. We went as far as you can with public comments. And should anybody other than Attorney Green wish to comment, their comments would be limited to the new evidence at that time. Is that what I understand? We'll do our best. So, okay, Attorney Green, floor is yours. And again, I'll say this again, since this hearing must close tonight. So we've got, I think, plenty of time. This hearing must close tonight. So hopefully we can get it within our normal 10 o'clock curfew, but we will be staying until this is done. Good evening, Attorney Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening on behalf of Stilson LLC in opposition to this application. Stilson LLC is the owner of 227 Stilson Road, which is directly across the street from the subject properties. I have submitted into evidence and into the record rather, a deed and field card for the property at 427 Stilson Road owned by my client. I have submitted the deed and field card for 430 Stilson Road that is owned by Matthew McDonald. And I have submitted the deed and field card for 452 Stilson Road, which is owned by Shapiro Commons, the applicant. And I verified those ownerships yesterday. So they are the current owners of those properties. There are 3 applications pending before the commission, as you're aware. There's a text amendment, a proposed map amendment, and basically a certificate of zoning compliance that is pending. So this is a little bit different because if this is approved, then the applicant is free to proceed with the development of the property basically at this point. Well, that would be I think the posture of the applicant, and obviously we don't adopt that. I have specifically incorporated the record of the previous application for DRD that was previously granted by the commission, and I had submitted that, and with the consent of Attorney Russo, staff has included that. I have also incorporated into the record the wetland approval for the DRD project, which involved 19 townhouses. I have a lot of comments on this application, but I had indicated to the commission that I will really try to move it along quickly. I would suggest that this plan was really, with all due respect to the applicant, somewhat tactical in my opinion, and was obviously designed, I think, to sort of promote or I think sort of push the DRD application forward, and certainly is a distant backup plan. And the application is really extremely incomplete, was not very well thought out, and I will just go through really briefly some of the issues with the site plan that was amended last Tuesday. And the first thing is well, I understand that the burden kind of shifts to the commission in the context of an 8-30G application. I think that there are sort of a basic threshold for information that you have to provide that enables the commission to respond. And this application is so lacking in detail that I would suggest that even, and this may form a legal issue, but it is so lacking in detail that I would suggest that the commission couldn't really respond to it. For example, there are no dimensions for the aisles. There's no dimensions for the parking spaces. There's no dimensions for the access drive into the property. There are site plan requirements which are incorporated by the proposed this proposed Stilson Road zone, and by basically the text amendment. And under our regulations, there are sort of some basic site plan standards which haven't been met. And and again, there were these amendments made last week, but there's no, for example, the contour lines don't carry off the site for 50 feet, which is one of the site plan requirements under our zoning regulations. The applicant really doesn't provide detail on Stilson Road in front of the site, although there are conclusions reached by the traffic expert. And there are some really difficult features of this site. For example, there's an entrance drive here, which was moved last week. It leads to a building, and can we call up the building elevations that show the what I'm going to call the north elevation of the building? Actually, the building, the portion of the building that faces Stilson Road. And if we can, is it possible to call that up?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen.
So you're looking for the elevation drawing?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so there you go. So you can't, it's difficult to see with this level of resolution, but basically the street side elevation plan shows the entrance into the site here. The building is a mere 8 feet 4 inches high in that entrance, and you can see the dimensions. It's actually lower than 8 feet 4 inches, and you can see the dimension there, 8.4. And that's even above, I guess you'd call it a soffit, I suppose, over that opening into the building. I've put into the record, for example, diagrams of a UPS truck that show a UPS truck is 10 feet tall, and I put in the UPS truck in the dimension. And lest there be any doubt that UPS trucks of that size do residential deliveries, the picture I took of the truck was in front of my home, and the driver was good enough to let me take a picture of that.
But the middle is where the access point is.
That middle is now where the access point was moved.
One of, I guess it looks like, right? It's.
So that's right here on the site.
No, thank you, yeah.
And
Just a quick question. So I found the older plans in the information submitted this week. Which folder is this?
there's a subfolder that says,
Submissions?
there's a subfolder called Materials Submitted July 29.
Yes. So, okay, thanks.
That's the new plans. So, UPS truck, 10 feet, 10 inches, Sprinter van, the mid-height Sprinter van, which a lot of, handicap or, and, sort of those kind of service vans are 9 feet tall. That would hit the building, can't access the building. Interestingly, while the applicant shows some sort of drawing of a fire truck, it's difficult to give that application any credit when there's no dimensions on the plan. There's no dimensions that show the width of the aisles here. And when I did scale the parking spaces, interestingly, the parking spaces are only 16 feet. And that's, while I understand that 8-30G is a little bit different in terms of our regulation requirements. Certainly, that is a cause for concern, and perhaps the town engineer can look at that, but it was sort of interesting the way the applicant blithely claimed that there's access for trucks and vehicles, but I would suggest that there isn't. Now, something really interesting happened last week, and Commissioner Randolph asked a question that sort of piqued my interest. And it related to landscaping. And on the one hand, sort of landscaping details, I question the sort of applicability of that under 8-30G and whether you can require landscaping as a requirement. It is interesting to note that the applicant proposes a retaining wall here along this border of the property. And it was interesting that Commissioner Randolph asked for more robust trees, because what the applicant, and if we can go to the planning plan, which is on the last page of the new application, and while we're getting there, I'm going to hand out this document for the commission, and let me give one to Chris.
New submission.
That?
It's a new submission.
I did today.
Close.
Is that?
Oh, close submissions.
Those submissions for you.
Right.
I wasn't here last week, so don't look at me.
Sorry, I'm sorry, what was it?
I thought we had closed submissions.
I had asked that you stop moving forward with the application. I'm sorry, I'll direct Mike.
No, that's okay. I mean,
What I had said was I can't respond. There was a new submission on the day of the hearing last week. And I had suggested to the commission that there would be no more submissions by the applicant so that the target would stop moving and we could respond to it.
he hasn't started his presentation. It's hard to.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm looking at it quickly, but it seems fine.
So I think a lot of this is common sense, but I wanted to submit. All right, do you have a copy? Did you get a copy? It's right there. Significantly, and if we could go, actually,
Did you submit this electronically?
yes.
All right, good, because I see a
Go
lot
to
of.
the other side, if you can, if I can go to the bottom of the plan.
I'm sorry,
There you go.
Can we zoom in on that a little bit?
So this is not the latest plan. This is the plan that was submitted originally, and it's not the July 29th plan. And I wouldn't be so picky, but it's important.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Page 10 of 10.
So Perfect. If we can just get to that, the boundary, yes, and if you could just enlarge a little bit. So basically what you can see is the applicant proposes arborvitae along that entire boundary with, I believe it's 470 Stilson Road. And
Sorry, it's lagging behind.
that's fine. But the big point is that this site plan shows, and again, it's not scaled, but when I scaled it, the area between that 16-foot parking space and the boundary of the property is only 18 inches, 1.5 feet. And it just doesn't make sense that it doesn't, and when Commissioner Randolph started talking about 5-foot-high arborvitae plants, when I looked into it, the ball of an arborvitae plant that's 5 feet tall is 16 to 18 inches large. That area is only 18 inches. And it only makes sense that when you plant a tree like that, first of all, the hole for the ball is supposed to be twice the size of the ball. So that won't be accommodated on the site. You're not supposed to plant a tree like that up against a retaining wall because there are roots that grow that create pressure, and that's all covered in these planting specs. And there are a number of cited publications that basically stand for the fact that trees of that nature need a much larger planting area. They need a much larger area to grow, and they can't be grown right up against a retaining wall. And significantly, that retaining wall, and this wasn't really discussed by the applicant, and I really don't understand it. That retaining wall is at 1.4 feet, at 1.8 feet, at 1.9, 11 feet. And at this point, it's 7 feet. It's a huge retaining wall. So I have actually, I'd like to call as a consultant, Steve Trinkus, who I know the commission is familiar with. Mr. Trinkus, are you there?
No, co-host.
Yes, I am, Joel.
So, Mr. Trinkus, at my request, did you take a look at the proposed retaining wall?
Yes, just for the record, Steve Trinkus, professional engineer from Southbury, Connecticut. I did look at the retaining wall. That is along the southern property line.
I'm sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Before you begin, can you just briefly, for the record, describe your education, training, and experience?
Yeah, just briefly, I have a Bachelor of Science in Forestry from the University of New Hampshire. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Connecticut since 1988. I'm expert in low impact development, and I do a lot of development work with similar retaining walls as being proposed here.
And at my request, did you take a look at the site plans?
Yes.
And did you observe any site plan design details, for example?
I did not see any details, conceptual details or otherwise for the retaining wall.
And I note that the location of the retaining wall is directly on the boundary line with the abutting properties at 470 Stilson Road. At 470 Stilson Road, did you observe that?
Yes, I did.
And my question for you, for the benefit of the commission, is based upon your education, training, and many years of experience as an engineer. Could that retaining wall, as proposed, be built in that location without involving construction activities on the abutting premises at 470 Stilson Road?
No, you cannot construct a retaining wall where the face of the wall is on a property line. The reason for that is all types of, whether they're a large concrete block, whether they're modular block retaining walls, cast and concrete retaining walls, they all require a footing. The modular block walls require a gravel footing that extends out in front of the downhill side of the retaining wall at least 12 inches to provide a stable base for the modular blocks to be stacked. So if the face of the wall is on the property line, that 1 foot gravel footing goes over the line.
And Mr. Trinkus, just on one other point, did you just hear my comments regarding the location of this a couple of dozen 5-foot arborvitae trees along the property lines and directly against the retaining wall? Did you hear my
Yes, I
comments on
did.
it? And does that present a structural issue for the retaining wall, having a tree literally planted directly against the wall?
The trees planted when you have a modular wall, which is not a cemented wall where there are loose joints. Arborvitaes are a relatively fast-growing tree, and their root systems will find the gaps between the blocks of the retaining wall, and they'll move through the gaps. And as the roots grow bigger, they will push the blocks one way or the other. Additionally, if this is a modular block wall, there is a series of geogrids that go behind the wall under the fill on the applicant's property. The roots will compromise that geogrid over time because they will grow through it, and the geogrid is simply plastic. So over time, again, the roots, which are very strong, can easily, if there's going through a 2-inch hole in the plastic, as that root gets bigger, it will break the plastic. And that can compromise the structural integrity of the wall. Trees should not be planted this close to a modular block wall.
And is that does that involve an issue of public health and safety where you have a wall of these dimensions and this landscaping directly against it?
Yeah, if the structural integrity of the wall over time gets compromised, it's clearly a safety issue because it can cause the wall to initially lean out, towards the downhill side, or begin to fall apart because of the pressure of the roots growing into the wall.
And what is, if you had to quantify your level of certainty on that, how would you quantify that?
It takes time, but it will happen. These trees, will grow. It may be 10 years from now, but they will get larger and put pressure against that wall. But it will disturb the wall. There's no doubt. I've seen it on other projects happen.
So that's 100% likelihood that the wall will ultimately fail.
It will get compromised by the trees in this close proximity, where it will cause a partial failure of the wall.
And that is 100%.
Yes, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Trinkus. I have no further questions. I don't know if the commission has a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Trinkus, in your opinion, how much would the wall have to be pulled back, I guess northward, in order to accommodate the considerations you talked about?
Well, we don't know the exact type of wall, but if it's a modular block wall, at least 12 inches back, although you need working room, so probably a couple feet, because you've got to have labor. You have to trench where the footing's going to go, put stone in it, compact it. So you really need a couple feet to work in.
So a couple of feet just to do the work, and then how much additional separation would you need between the wall and any arborvitaes?
I would want a planting area like 5 feet behind the wall, and the trees would go on that 5-foot limit to stay away from the wall itself.
And Mr. Trinkus, if you could not access the site at 470 Stilson Road, and if you had to perform all the work necessary to create the wall on 452 Stilson Road, how large of a construction envelope would you require? So would that push the wall further back from the boundary line?
I don't think so. I think you could do it from the site also, but again, the face of the wall should be, a good 18 inches back from the property line. Because again, not seeing all the topography on the 470 property, the stone base has to be level, but you're putting a foot of stone there, so you have a little bit of the taper of the stone at the end. So again, it depends on the site conditions. But if you moved it back 18 inches to 2 feet, you could build it from you could build it from the applicant's property, but the wall would have to be a couple feet back from the property line to do so.
And then you're suggesting that the trees that there be a 5-foot envelope be within the property from the retaining wall for the trees?
If you're gonna plant trees there, yes, yeah.
And at some point, I don't know who the right person on your consultant team is. I'd like someone to speak to the implication that would then have for fire access, traffic access on site, of having to move the retaining wall up.
I don't have that. I have a traffic consultant, but we couldn't.
I guess is there someone who can answer the question, would fire trucks or other vehicles be able to circulate at all? If you had to move the wall up, that moves the parking spaces up and assuming impacts the aisles.
We couldn't do that sort of geometry without having dimensions for the existing lot.
I mean, but the counter that is drop one of the two things too. So, I mean, your point's well taken. But I mean, if we have to do reasonable accommodations, one could be just getting rid of the retaining wall or getting rid of the plantings. So, and that's, I think that's gotta be addressed as well. I mean, your point's well taken that right now, that plan all makes sense for everything that Mr. Trink has said. Everything's gotta get pushed into the site. But I think, if we have to do our statutory obligation of looking at reasonable accommodations, assuming that affects, what you're saying, the emergency vehicles or just circulation in general, suburban, for example. At least one of those two, if not maybe both, go away. But I mean, that's.
Mr. Trinkus, on that subject, are you able to opine whether
No, I know.
parking spaces that are in the 16-foot range present a traffic or safety issue on the site?
I mean, Steve Trinks for the record, typical spaces are 18-foot in depth. 16 is a depth used for compact vehicles, i.e. short cars. Even in an 18-foot space, a big SUV is gonna stick out, a foot or two beyond the space just because of the size of the vehicle. So I'm looking actually at the applicant's fire truck movement plan, and at a couple spots, the outer limits of the turning movements are touching or hair going over the end of the parking spaces, both towards the building and then towards the retaining wall. So if things move into the site, that's going to get even tighter and maybe will prevent the movement of the aerial truck within the parking lot. It's very tight right now, as shown on the applicant's plan.
Ms. Harrigan, if I may, have we gotten anything from fire or our own traffic engineer, not traffic, our own engineering department on this yet? Have we not reached out to them?
Not yet.
They haven't done a code review on this, right?
This one did not have a code review, no.
Okay, so we have to reach out to our people, obviously. We have to do that anyways, but we especially now. Commissioner Randolph.
So Mr. Trinkus, if I say grading easement, do you know what that means?
Oh, yes, I do, sir.
So, this wall could be built if there were a grading easement, if the landscaping were removed, or if there were angled parking, for example, in the middle. So I guess generally, in your opinion, this is a early drawing, and I'm just looking at what's up on the screen right now. It looks like there's 24 feet. I've just scaled it off my screen. There's about 24 feet between the end of the parking stall, and parking stalls, my understanding, can be between 15 and 18 feet. Is that correct?
In my professional opinion, standard parking spaces are 18 to 20, depending on the municipality. More municipalities are going to a 9 by 18 space. The aisle for 90-degree parking is 24 feet, to allow to back out and, make the turn.
So the information that I have that's publicly available that you can make smaller stalls, is that incorrect?
Well, some towns allow for compact spaces where the length, there's still 9 foot, well, the width goes to 8 foot, I believe, and the length goes to 16, but that's for, a small car, I would say, like a Volkswagen Jetta just comes into mind.
The reason I'm asking is because our obligation is to make a reasonable accommodation, but looking at the site plan, if this were any of those issues, a grading easement, the landscape were removed, or the parking were in the middle were angled, those are possible solutions, correct?
Well, angled parking actually within the same area as 90-degree parking will actually yield less spaces.
Right. I'm not talking about the number of spaces, I'm talking about circulation.
Yeah, you could angle those ones that are in the center of the parking area.
So there are other ways to make accommodation on this, correct?
Yeah, yes, you could always modify the alignment of the spaces.
Thank you.
Green.
Yeah, I'll be right with you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Trinkus.
You're welcome.
I think, it's an interesting issue because the plan that is proposed would require the owner of 470 Stilson Road to be a party to the application. And I don't know how that factors into the commission sort of adjusting the site plan where it's not organic to the site plan itself, but it's that another property owner would be required, but
You're talking about the retaining wall?
yeah. Okay.
Clarification point, Commissioner Worcester.
If it's, yeah, I mean, if it's now, fine, but just let's make it quick, because I just see the time.
So are we reviewing the text amendment or the site plan?
All three items are good and called together.
So what I'd like to do now is I have, just for the convenience of the commission, I have, this is the approved 19 unit townhouse site plan and utility plan. And you may want to, if you have a pencil, you may want to mark it because I'm going to hand out a couple of others. So that is the 19 unit approved townhouse plan. This next document that I'm handing out is the original 8-30 plan. And finally,
Sorry.
and I've attached also the underground utility plan to each of these. And this would be the amended July 29 plan 8-30G. The original 8-30G, you have the 19 unit townhouse plan. And you'll know the reason I've provided these, and basically the point of all of this is that if you compare second page of each of these documents and the first page, you can see that there have been dramatic modifications made to the site plan. And you can see that the underground utility plan for these respective developments are markedly different. And I was struck by the letter that is in the record that I received dated July 8th, where it's a letter from Jay Edwards to the town of Fairfield. And it makes reference to them it may concern development plans for the subject property recently approved by Inland Wetlands, PZ and WPCA. And it suggests that the current proposal has been revised to remove parking, building, and other improvements from the 100 upland review area. I guess my point is there has been no application made to the Conservation Commission acting as the Inland Wetlands Agency with respect to this application. So the 19 unit townhouse plan was subject to and approved for a wetland permit. And curiously and strangely, the applicant sort of jumped over this when asked about it last week. But the fact of the matter is, this plan, which is dramatically different in terms of, and obviously different in terms of building design, impervious area, stormwater treatment, in every way, is completely different. And yet there has never been an application submitted. No application is pending for this application, and this application should be denied by the commission on that basis. And I'm referring to case law such as Carr versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the town of Bridgewater, which is 273 Connecticut 573. And it's always sort of a problem when lawyers start citing case law to commissions, and I don't expect you to interpret the law, but I think that staff and anyone can advise you that a wetland permit was required to be filed for this application, and that never,
Even for an 830G,
even for an 8-30.
is that what PAR is, was an
Yes.
830G?
So Carr was an 8-30G.
Okay, you don't have to, just to keep me
Yes.
fluid, but that's fine.
Yes.
I thought I recall Attorney Russo saying something along the lines of the reason I thought, if I recall, was the staff at the Inland Wetlands Department said it wasn't needed or something along those lines. Did you,
When I've made inquiry, and I won't.
I'll ask him in rebuttal.
I won't discuss who I spoke to, but there was some element of surprise from someone I spoke
All
with.
right, fair enough. So your point is okay, that's fine. I'll ask him to go over that again in rebuttal because I need to.
Okay. The last point, and I said that I'm trying to stick by my word to be brief this evening, is the text amendment does not represent an 8-30G application. It affects properties, several properties. It only makes reference as being applicable to properties west of Black Rock Turnpike on Stilson Road and within 750 feet, and would include a variety of properties and potential properties. It would include, for example, the property of my client. And by definition, it's not an 8-30G set-aside regulation. The regulation was not analyzed by the applicant for compliance even with its term. It provides, for example, for 70-foot high buildings, 70-foot high buildings, no setbacks. There was no showing of capacity for traffic, capacity for stormwater, for safe access based on those parameters that are, the envelope that's basically created by the regulation. It doesn't dictate the number of bedrooms. It doesn't say, for example, that there couldn't be a 2-story garage. But it does say that it requires compliance with applicable town regulations. But the interesting thing is that the text amendment is even on the agenda as an independent application, and there's no conceptual site plans that meet that definition. It's just an open text amendment for 750 feet west of Black Rock Turnpike on Stilson Road. So it's not landed. It doesn't have a site plan or an 8-30G site plan attached to it. Let's see. Again, there's no dimensions. It does not meet the standard for a conceptual site plan. The site plans provided don't meet the basic standards of our regulations. And by the way, their text amendment even says that the site plan, that everything that's not altered by the regulation must meet the standards of our zoning regulations. It doesn't do that. And once again, the whole application is so lacking in detail that in all aspects, it's got to be denied by the commission. So I don't know if you have questions for me at this moment.
Subject to questions, are you done? Just out of curiosity.
I would just suggest that the application by Shapiro Commons, once again, doesn't include the owners of affected properties as we've discussed, and it's just fully inadequate.
I mean, we've had regulation amendments where an applicant, I mean, we did it for Fairfield Place, where we hit that property, but then we hit another zone. We've changed the amendments or the regulations for the zone itself. So then we didn't bring in all the other owners for the entire zone. I mean, are you saying that they have? Because I just don't think we've done that before, is having all of the, maybe Attorney Russo or somebody representing all of the affected property owners in a particular zone or area.
I would suggest that the site plan is virtually a nullity because it's so lacking in essential information. A nullity. It doesn't, in my opinion, even include sort of the requirements for conceptual plan. And therefore, it's not truly an 8-30G application.
I mean, because the other thing is, we've gotten hit with this, and Beach Road was,
I know.
yeah, I mean, just hit the site itself. Even if the application, the regulation goes outside of the site itself.
Affected other properties.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I
what they,
recognize
yeah,
that.
no, so I mean, that's I guess the counter to that. But the one thing about the site plan, conceptual site plan, I mean, that brings up the other application we have on, what is it, Congress? Where is it?
Yeah.
Congress.
Yeah.
But I mean, the statute, it doesn't give me the impression that you have to have we have to propound a regulation to require them to give a site plan, a conceptual plan for a regulation. Now, they've given a site plan as far as this current application, but I guess, is your point just simply?
This isn't a conceptual site plan.
No, this one, well, I mean, certainly not the number 6, the compliance application is certainly not conceptual. I mean, I guess your point is it's closer to a conceptual than it is to a, one you're for detail that you're used to, I'm sure, based on what you've said, but, I guess your point is though that the regulations proposed potentially have a larger, I mean, to the extent that they are, you said there's certain things that are missing, but a larger envelope of even what the current building is proposed as.
The regulations themselves, this whole regulation, the text of this entire regulation doesn't even make reference to Stilson Road. None of it. None of it. It doesn't even,
Look, I thought I had basis to this area. I mean,
it says, all it says is, within 750 feet of the major commercial corridor of Black Rock. It refers to
I'm gonna look at it. I mean, that's fine. Then Commissioner Levy, Randolph, and I didn't mean to try to keep things moving, so it's 9
I'll
o'clock.
try and be quick. I guess the question is similar to what we have to deal with elsewhere. And, Beach Road, where it basically says if it's limited to the site in question, as I read 830G, it has to be in connection with a proposed development. And apparently there is a proposal to develop this property. So could we consider the text amendment in connection and limit it to this proposed property? And since we have no regulation that requires that you submit a conceptual plan, evaluate the text amendment alone on that basis. Follow me.
I would suggest that the site plan is so flawed. And I'm not suggesting that it's jurisdictional because that's not what CAR says. It doesn't say that you lose jurisdiction, but I'm saying that the site plan is so flawed that I don't think it forms the basis for exercise of 8-30, well, sort of the standards under 8-30G, which is an appeal statute, but.
Commissioner Randolph, sorry, you were done.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, same two topics. So I'm reading the text amendment and it basically makes reference to a distance and streets. If that were more specifically defined, would that not address your question?
If it were, but it's not.
Right. But if it were, that would address your question, correct? Okay, so.
That's what happened on Beach Road, in my opinion.
So second, in our regs, do we not have definitions for site plan submission requirements?
We do, but this is an 8-30G, so.
Right, but it did, do you know whether the site plan submitted, complied with our requirements?
Even when we do 8-30G reviews during code review for projects, we can make reference to our regulations, but they don't have to meet our regulations.
Right, but I'm just asking in general, because the contention was made that the site plans were incomplete. I'm not sure how that actually compares to our standards. But to your point, 830G site plans don't need to comply with any standards. Is that what you're saying?
It is obviously, to the applicant's benefit to provide as much information as possible so that the burden that you're required to meet for 830Gs, you understand whether there's any kind of clear safety issue, or if there's not, that the plans are articulated thoroughly enough for you to be able to make those determinations. But if this were, let's just throw out an example. If this were a 10-unit 830G, 2 bedrooms, and we knew there were only going to be 20 vehicles coming to that site, there's no requirement for a traffic report, but we customarily receive those oftentimes from applicants because they want to be comprehensive with the proposal. It's not required anywhere that they provide that information for an 830G.
So I'm sorry, just to be clear, do we have any way to understand whether the site plans submitted comply with our standards, whether or not it's an 830G? Okay.
It's not our standard.
So I guess what Commissioner Randolph may be asking is there a way for staff to look at this and see this as not an 830G, but as a regular, and do almost kind of like your own little part of your code review and see whether there are inconsistencies with our regulations in general, but.
I certainly can. I mean, I'm happy to do that.
I'm not even asking about regulation consistency. I'm asking about submission to the incompleteness of the application, because that's the contention is that the information.
Well, that's a little different. I mean,
My point is, I'm not sure, and this may be new law before it's over, but I'm not sure that you can shift the burden to the commission to the point where you have drawings without dimensions and where the commission or town staff or whoever has to start redesigning drawings with dimensions and.
well, I mean, we had this conversation with Congress Street with, simply just giving us, so I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I would have thought it'd be always on the applicants and then the burden shifts on the appellate part, but I mean, that statute could easily be read to say the burden's on you to begin with, is if you're gonna deny it, so it goes against most jurisprudence, but I mean, your point's taken. I mean, I think we've heard enough of the arguments in the past in general, they're not getting enough information, we have to take them case by case. So. Okay. Sorry.
That's all I have. And I want to thank the commission as always for your.
Thank you.
For your patience.
Okay, in line with what we talked about earlier, I'll open it up to the rest of the public. I understand though that public has had a chance, and as I remember, the video, public has had a chance to talk about at least the stuff that was, everything that was submitted except for what was new at last time. So, which was really just the access. So,
Access, landscaping.
revised access and landscaping, so I'll,
And they changed the wetland.
in the wetland, okay. All right, so, I mean,
I have one other point, just to throw
Sure.
one sentence. The applicant did not, there was no comment or adjustment on the traffic study when the driveway was moved. And that driveway was shifted slightly. I understand it's access only. And also, there was a suggestion that was made in the past regarding widening that's referenced in the traffic consultant's report, yet there's no detail in this plan on that suggestion of widening to create a left turn lane coming towards Platte property.
thank you.
Thanks, that's all.
All right, so I'll open it up to the public again to talk about at least those three issues, the new access point, landscaping, and then the adjustment on the wetlands boundary. So, first come, first serve. If anybody wants to speak, come on up. Come on up, sir, yeah. Doctor, excuse me.
Yeah, Thomas Braun, 200 Lakeside Drive, Fairfield, and my wife own the building across the street. And specifically to the access point, there was some talk, they moved the driveway access point, and there was also discussion last week, which I couldn't really completely follow, that they're gonna make the left turn lanes possibly extended further south. The main problem is exiting my building right now to take a left turn, very difficult. You have, chair cars, ambulances, little old ladies driving their husbands to dialysis, all kinds of people like that. If they extend the left turn lane further south towards North Benson in that direction, there's no way we could make a left turn out of our driveway because we have to cross 2 lanes of traffic to make a left. Becomes almost impossible, becomes very unsafe. And it's a clear and present safety issue that we cannot, 50% of our traffic turns left. There's almost no way to egress to the left turn. And I think that's the main thing because the other issues, I don't want to be ad nauseum. The other issues they've been discussing, I don't know if it's new comparing to college dorms. Just want to point out this building is very close to Fairfield U. And if you do the same analysis, which I'm not going to, you literally almost need another 100 parking spaces. It was filled up with, each bedroom had 2 students, each with a car. Just ponder
No,
that
thank you.
because
It's
there's
fine.
no on-street parking anywhere in the area within walking distance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Fine if it's not, because it's so limited, but I think we can agree with most of it. Anybody joining us remotely? Do you see Mr. Mullen in the chat? One announcement, if that's, you don't see anybody in the chat, yeah. If anybody's joining us remotely that wishes to be heard on this application for the limited purposes that I outlined, if you can identify yourself either by signing into the chat or raising your digital hands on the bottom of the toolbar to get our attention, please. Nobody, we're all set, at least in person, it looks like, which is fine. Anybody joining us remotely wish to be heard in this application? And please chat, sign into the chat or raise your digital hand at the bottom of the toolbar. Say raise hand. All right, thanks. Yeah, it says raise hand, I think, at the bottom.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Yes.
And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to also let the commission and the applicant and Attorney Green know that Mr. Mullen did review the protest petition that was submitted. And there are enough signatures and area represented by those signatures. And I know there's been some discussion about
We're gonna discuss that with
case
the
law and everything else,
In the
but
regular course, it meets the standard
correct,
for.
it's more than
yeah.
20%
Gotcha.
represented.
Okay, thank you. Final call. Anybody joining in person or remotely that wishes to be heard? Again, if you're joining remotely, please sign in the chat or raise your digital hands at the bottom of the, press the raise hand function at the bottom of the toolbar. Not hearing anything, I'll close the public comment portion. Attorney Russo, rebuttal.
Yes, Chair, Commissioners, Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzo LLC offices at 10 Sasko Hill Road in Fairfield. Here on behalf of the applicant. Before I get to my closing statements, I'll just address some of Joel's comments. The first is, Joel talks about this deficiency in the site plan. It's a scaled plan. That's the requirement. It says scaled plan. So that's what the purpose of that serves, is that if you want to find a dimension, you can use, because it's scaled, you can use that to determine that. The requirement that you have to show every dimension of every turn, I mean, that's, it's not a requirement that I see. I think as Emmeline stated, this is separate from the zoning regulations, but the purpose of the purpose of a scale plan is if you wanted to measure the distance from parking space 40 to 72, or if you wanted to measure how far this building was from that building, or that's why it's scaled. They are 18-foot spaces, by the way. It's a scaled plan, and that's a traditional requirement. He mentioned the building height for the clearing into the garage that was designed to meet code. My understanding, it's subsection I of section 14-253A of the Connecticut General Statutes. So its height is meets code.
What's that section again?
Sorry, subsection I of section 14-253A. I think there's
14.
it's 14-253A.
And then sub
There's a number of requirements about access, height access that's in that section. The UPS truck has access on the southern driveway. There's nothing that requires UPS to have to be able to get under a building or have to be able to have access to every entry point into a site. The conversation with regard to constructing the wall on our property. Again, I think Attorney Green and his engineer are off on some of the dimensions there. But we would be comfortable with which I think might be a catch-all that solves the issue. It's a condition of approval that the wall be built entirely on our property and still provide sufficient fire access around the parking area as we've shown on our submitted plan. Our engineer thinks it's designed appropriately.
Well, what about, it's not just the wall. Obviously it has to be built entirely onto your property. Unless they gave you consent, and I'm gonna assume they're not.
It's an easement, right?
What's that?
Yeah, unless they gave us an easement.
Yeah, so that's easy, but it's not just the wall, it's the wall plus his portion about his comments about the landscaping, which I think makes. Well, of course, yeah, but the wall with the footing underneath and the landscaping being right next to it, how that's gonna impact the wall and how that needs to be pushed out, so to speak. So, yeah, you got the right idea with the condition of approval, if not dropping one or both. But that should be, it should be wall entirely on property. And then I guess tree landscaping sufficiently far away from
the wall to build. Those walls are reviewed by this town engineer and building, and so I think they would certainly opine on that. And I think there's reasonable accommodations that were discussed about whether it's shortening the spaces, which again are 18 feet long, they can be shortened down.
But I gotta include landscaping in that condition of approval though.
Well, I think the wall should, a condition of approval that the wall be constructed entirely within the property. If there was an issue with landscaping, it could be replaced with fencing, instead of it. Again, these are issues that Attorney Green's raising to find certain site issues that they think they have identified, it has nothing to do with public health and safety, which is what this application turns on. We're happy to make any accommodations we can and try to keep the landscaping there, where we have proposed it.
Is there a reason why the wall was needed? And just
I'd have to,
grade change? Okay.
the grade change, I mean,
No, that's fine. I just don't recall. It's hard when I'm looking at these things I'm reviewing them on video. It's always easier to absorb it here in person.
But certainly I think there are reasonable accommodations, to allow the wall to be constructed, and, provide appropriate fire access, around the, site. And then, with regards to future approvals, we would have to, obtain those. There's, in my opinion, in the review of our wetlands approval, I think what we proposed, particularly with the revised plans, we could submit to conservation if they felt different, if they felt differently, then we would have to work it out with them, but that's a separate department. I mean, that's.
And I just don't recall. I thought we discussed this way back when we first talked. Why not go to conservation first, or is it just simply because of the moratorium?
Well, we submitted, but again, we designed a plan that we felt was in keeping with our approval in terms of.
Okay, so it wasn't as
limits
if,
of disturbance, because, that's the key thing in the upland review areas.
so what, I thought I recalled you saying that you went to them and they said something that told you they didn't need it. You don't, it's not.
No, I didn't, I don't think that's.
Which is fine.
I
That
must
could
have
just simply be a
misstated.
memory mistake
Yeah.
on my end. I just don't recall.
There was limits of disturbance, and we provided at the last hearing, Jason might have these numbers, but from where we've gone in terms of impervious area, has gone down from the 19-unit plan to the original proposed and to what we're proposing now.
Okay, but just to put a pin in it, I guess, you didn't go to conservation first for any, you made the determination not to on your own. Okay, fine. I misunderstood, remembered what you had said though. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's me. That's on me.
Okay, so with that, I'll just go into closing remarks. We do have folks on, by the way. Yeah,
I thought I saw
they're not with me, but if you had questions. So in this application, set of applications, again, we are seeking a text amendment, which does say, just point that out, does say Stilson Road. It specifically says
Not just in the title, I hope, right?
39.4.1 and sorry, it's been a long night of talking. An SRHZ is an overlay zone and shall be located only on land fronting on Stilson Road, south of Black Rock Turnpike. So it specifically says that in there. We've submitted all the necessary plans and reports for these applications and provide expert testimony and expert evidence that there will be no specific harm to any public interest. We've submitted an affordability plan, which has the necessary requirements regarding designating the administrator, income limits, and all the requirements. We've submitted a traffic study that concluded that the traffic impact will be negligible. No evidence has been submitted of a quantifiable probability that a specific harm will result. Theoretical possibilities or concerns are not sufficient to deny an 830G application. We have engineered plans and full architecturals. Our licensed traffic expert, again, has found no significant impact on the safety or convenience of the roadway. We have demonstrated the site has sufficient sight lines. It has access to water and sewer. We've shown that a fire truck can access the site and building. And this building is also equipped with that thorough sprinkler system that is recommended by the fire marshal. No evidence has been submitted to show that a health and safety public interest clearly outweighed the need for affordable housing, or that the interest could not be protected by reasonable accommodations. I pointed this out last time. This development is on the lower end of density for 830G developments. If you look at it per square foot basis, 131 Beach Road was 1 unit per 697 square feet. For example, 528 Black Rock Turnpike was 1 unit per 508 square feet. This is 1 unit per 1,060 square feet. Commissioner Randolph made some comments with regard to the landscaping plan. We'd be willing to accept as a condition of approval that we vary the tree types on the plan. I was reminded after the meeting that arborvitae are trees, but I understand the desire for more variety than having it being overwhelmingly arborvitae. We did show pin oaks and maples, so we'd be happy to interchange those arborvitaes with those plantings at the direction of the working with the tree warden. The other comment was regarding shade trees and putting them amongst the parking areas and the outdoor parking areas. Again, we're not bound by the zoning regulations, but in trying to meet that requirement that you have in the zoning regulations. I sort of leave that up to you whether or not you think having the parking is more important than having landscape parking spaces, or if you think vice versa. By my count, we would need to convert 3 spaces to break up those 3 rows. And we would have no issue with that as a condition of approval. It's got to be every 10 spaces. So we would, in those appropriate locations, convert those spaces to landscaped areas. Again, with that, I think we satisfy all the requirements under section 830G and would answer any questions or comments that you might have.
Commissioner Randolph.
Yeah, two questions. So, or comments. One, I appreciate the accommodation with the trees. And just to clarify, I think a point that was made, in order to build this, you'll need to go to the building department and get a building permit, who would need to approve your retaining wall and footings.
Correct. Engineered plan regarding the retaining wall.
Plan. And in terms of the text amendment itself, it's sloppy. And I really wish you'd spent more time on it, because 750 feet from the corner of Black Rock Turnpike encompasses about 5 additional houses. So I wish you had done a better job on this, but as a condition of approval, you're going to need to do a better job on this to make the text amendment more specific, because right now it goes all the way out to, it encompasses 5 other houses, 750 feet measured from Black Rock. I'm looking at it right now.
Well, again, this text amendment is modeled under on other affordable housing text amendments that have been submitted.
Your linear footage is wrong.
Sorry?
Your 750 feet is wrong.
I don't think,
as far as what?
I don't think his point is not just limiting it to this parcel.
Right.
Courts have said that is something that, we can do or probably should be doing as a reasonable accommodation. But I don't think his point was that the regulation would only be on this parcel. Whether we agree with it or not, though.
Well, yeah, but it's just that this property that we're proposing right now for the zone change fits that text amendment because it's located within 750 feet of Black Rock Turnpike.
So you're asking us to make a zoning change to an undefined map area. So this is a text amendment that should have a map associated with it, but there's no map. Because right now you're saying everything's 750 feet from Black Rock, but it doesn't specify how far north on Black Rock it goes.
It's 700, it says 750, an SRHC is an overlay zone and shall be located only on land fronting on Stilson Road. So it has to be on Stilson Road. It can't be on any other street.
Okay.
It has to be south of Black Rock Turnpike. So it can't be north of Black Rock Turnpike. And it has to be located within 750 feet of Black Rock Turnpike, setting a defined limit and a defined number of properties. That's one of the reasons, I don't know if you remember when I was discussing that text amendment, there's some applications that just say is located 750 feet from Black Rock Turnpike. And the problem, I think, with that wording is sometimes you can get a property that's at 749 and then it extends, the rest of it is beyond 750. So I want to make it more defined and clear. So I said it's within 750 feet, which severely limits the properties that would be eligible for this.
So my quick and dirty review of this. This incorporates 430, 452, 470, 484, and 502. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, it's very limited.
Includes 5 addresses.
Right, but that, I mean,
Is that your intent?
yeah, overlay zones sometimes include many. I mean, that was the whole thing with 131 Beach Road. This application has text amendment and then the zone change for the specific 2 properties. So I mean,
I'm sorry.
you typically don't have something that says the overlay zone is only over 430 and 452 Stilson Road. It usually has an area like that it's within. With certain requirements as frontage.
Would you be open to limiting the extent of the text amendment to only include, to more specifically describe the intent of 430 and 452?
The commission can restrict it as they feel. I mean, obviously, I'm only concerned with 430 and 452.
Answer is yes. That's what the courts will tell. I mean, that's what Beach Road told us, Connecticut Supreme Court. I mean,
Told us what?
to do exactly that, limit it to the parcel.
Right, but
So-
his text amendment doesn't do that now. So
I know, but they didn't do it then and,
Right.
same idea.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay. Right or wrong, I'm just saying that's what happened.
Well, I guess one last thing in terms of the completeness of the drawings, and I think you already addressed it. You're open to completing the site plan to address the issues of circulation.
Yes.
I want to clarify that.
To the extent that our fire chief or anybody else is asking for something more complete.
Right, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more detail on building permit level plans and.
No, I understand, but I mean, we have to make,
If you want to,
hypothetically, there was a concern that fire truck couldn't access this, and that's what Attorney Green and others are gonna say, and, I look at this and I guess I can try, but I'm gonna be asking our staff to reach out to our engineering department and our fire chief, see if in their respective capacities that, if there's any safety issues. The main one being, as I said, the, access for emergency vehicles. If they come back to us and say, I can't tell, what I may very well consider at that point is, denial without prejudice to give more detail, potentially. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm concerned about is if my own experts are saying to me, I can't tell based on what you've given me, then I kind of in a quandary because if they can't figure it out, I'm not gonna be able to figure it out.
so we would accept a condition of approval that we would provide appropriate access to the site and building to the fire department.
Yeah, I mean, that punts an issue though, that, I mean, listen, my stances on, completeness of applications is kind of well known as far in, leaving it to the experts, but there comes a point where if my own experts are telling me at this level, I can't determine it. I gotta be able to make that determination on my own instead of just, even if I'm gonna be relying upon. We'll figure it. I mean, that's something we'll have to see what.
I mean, the only thing is, again,
Even if
it
I
seems
deny
on that is our engineer feels that there is some attorney
Fair
around it and Attorney Green didn't identify the area for the fire truck where it wasn't working. I mean,
I know, but I mean, if my own experts are gonna tell me I don't have enough information, let me ask you this, I don't think a denial without prejudice hurts you as far as the moratorium. Because you'll just come in with a new application and tack on what the previous one was. Tack it on to this one.
But I don't understand why that couldn't just be handled in the normal course of.
Well, and I'm not saying it can't be, I'll have to think about it more, but that might be something we need to figure out too, because I wanna know what that implication is. A denial without prejudice, how that affects you with the moratorium. Should we go down that route? But I wanna know that myself, so.
I mean, and then that gets into what's the public safety and health.
Reed Bronson.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. All right. We'll figure that, I mean, that's maybe something we'll worry about later. It's gonna depend on what experts say and what comes up about it, so. But yeah, I understand your condition of approval.
Cause I think that covers it because you're not gonna be able to, I think, introduce new evidence.
Yeah, but it's coming from our own experts though. I mean, that's a common thing that we get is an opinion from
And I
our own
wouldn't be able
experts.
to respond to if they.
That's always the case, though. I mean, normally it's the other way around where, well, not always, but I mean, that's what happens for anybody, depending on what our guys and gals have to say. So, I mean, that's what we always do is reach out to our town engineer and whatever they say is what they say and the hearing's closed at that point generally. So, I mean, you guys went, and then here's the thing too, you guys didn't do a code review. So I mean, which is you're right. That's kind of where it gives everybody a chance to kind of see things up
But
front.
code review is not a requirement for an 830G application, and I mean,
I don't
usually
disagree.
memorandums are, I mean, just like deep, memorandums are submitted into the record, and then
I'm just saying, like, it's everybody, every time we've done this, if we don't have responses from our engineer or anybody, or any of our town experts, we ask after the record's closed. It's our right to do so. We've been doing that since I've been on this thing for 10 years. And it hasn't been an issue. Generally, it's an issue from the opposition because they don't get a chance to respond to what our experts normally say is they agree or they don't, or whatever the case is. Because normally they've talked to the applicant's experts have talked to our experts beforehand. Got an understanding. Now you didn't do that route. You don't know what our experts are gonna say. But we still have the right, I think, to go and talk to them first. I mean, if we're wrong, then it's an appealable thing, but I mean,
well, I guess what I would say, just for the record, is again, that sufficient evidence has not been submitted into the record as to the fact that fire access cannot be appropriately provided to the site and building. And therefore, I think that there's no sufficient evidence to deny this application over some type of public health and safety issue.
Okay.
I understand.
All right, I think we should leave it there. No.
Just one minor issue. Apologize for this, but the permitted use is 39.5. Multifamily parking, pre-existing residential development. Can we strike signs from there? Why do we need signs?
Well, again, this is something I've seen on other 830G developments, and signs would be, if it was, it's called Shapiro Commons, if it was named Shapiro Commons and they wanted a sign out front that.
Does that
identify them.
Is that requirement to assure affordable housing? I don't think it is. Parking, yes. Multifamily, yes, but signs,
I identifies
can you give me the argument to say?
I think it identifies the location of the development. And I've seen a number of housing developments in town that have similar identifiers. I think the Oaks has a sign out front. There's a number of developments, I think, that have signs out front indicating what they are.
Sure.
What their name is. If you wanted, because I'm not sure what you're concerned about, but if you wanted a restriction that it not be commercial, I have no issue with that.
I want to
Not a
strike
commercial sign, just a residential.
signs from there, just so we don't have another mattress store sign.
Can I make a friendly suggestion? If your client is okay with the existing sign regulations that apply to residential properties, you can certainly reference it that way. Because we do, as Attorney Rousseau brought up, we do allow for identification signage for residential buildings like condominiums. We have standards for those. So I don't necessarily think it's inconsistent, but it would be nice if it's consistent with our own regulations.
No issue with that.
So right now it's
To open, I got it.
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
So I'll close the hearing on this application. Thank you, everybody. We can go to our last item, which is good. This is half hour. I think that's last item, zoning regulation amendment, application of town of Fairfield to reformat the existing regulations, tables, and reorder and reorganize the existing language into more orderly sections. The business, the content has been only to be compliant with statutory changes required by section 8-2. Let me text Commissioner Beaumont if I would, unless you see her already, Mr. Mullen.
Not see Commissioner Braun. On the.
That's fine. I'm just gonna text her. I said I would because she recused herself. We can get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I should have provided this to you and I apologize, but I know that we had a prior meeting where we reviewed very extensively what the changes were to the draft zoning regulations that were included in your packet. And that is, strictly to reorganize and reformat the zoning regulations. The only changes that have been made to the regulations are those changes that were dictated by state statute changes made by the legislature. And so one of the things that we did, for example, is it's not unique to Fairfield, but zoning regulations over time, as zoning amendments are made, they are kind of stuffed in unusual places. And so this provided us with an opportunity to reorganize into sections that made more sense, where, for example, we have the zoning districts all in one place instead of stuffed into odd sections. We have our overlay districts all in one place, supplemental standards all in one place, procedures and administration for how we process our regulations, both for compliance all the way through to the various types of applications that are reviewed before the commission themselves, and then reordering some of the definitions in the back. So again, strictly reorganization. One of the things, and I'm just give you a preview for what phase 2 will be, because we very consciously decided not really to revise language for this first phase. One of the things that we will do once the order of the regulations are in what we think is a more proper, orderly fashion, we will start moving some of the supplemental standards and probably taking those from other sections, so those are clearer as well. We are working, John, Assistant Planning Director Mullen in particular, is working with our zoning enforcement staff on some of the issues that are commonplace that they have to deal with, for lack of better terminology, some of the precedent decisions that we make in the office that aren't necessarily appropriately represented by language within our zoning ordinance, which becomes a challenge to enforce over time, especially if we need to go to court for those issues. So there's kind of a wish list from staff. I know there's a wish list on behalf of the commissioners. And then there's also the items I think that we've identified within our POCD. One of the more significant wish list items that I have as well is we have several floating TOD zones, and I would love just one TOD zone. That would be great if we could figure out how to make that simpler and kind of take those out of its disparate parts right now and reorganize that. But the initial reorganization is really the first step of this process. And I know many of you have kind of been along for this journey and have looked at this a couple of times now. But if you have any questions, that I'm here to answer them, and hope that we can move this forward so we can really get underway with phase 2.
For the statutory changes stuff, that's already been done because the statute has been amended. There's nothing in our
State statute. So
state statute.
one of the primary examples was the elimination. Many towns have this, where there was a minimum square footage requirement in residential zones, and it varied. In some of the larger lot zones, for example, in the AAA zones, there was a minimum requirement if you had a one-story structure that it be at least 1,000 square feet. And I'm just throwing out the example for, and if you had a multiple story structure, it had to be a minimum square foot. It was really just to kind of protect minimum property values, that you would have at least a house of a minimum size. The state legislature determined that they felt that that was really more appropriately to be determined by our health safety codes. So whether it's a health department code or a building code, that's really where the minimum size for structures should be dictated and not by municipalities.
So again, as we've been discussing with this is purely, we're changing format as far as how it looks. To the extent there was any statutory changes, it's being adjusted to affect those statutory changes because it's already the case now.
Correct.
Thank you. Commissioner Levy?
And does, the changes we've made since we first drafted this, like to the center design business district, has that been included or that's still to be done?
Those have been included. We actually checked in with Attorney Pierce, and he felt that it was appropriate to include those in these draft regulations because you as a commission adopted them. And while they are under appeal, we can always strike them later if the courts decide that that's appropriate. But as you know, you have a lot of legislative latitude within what state statute provides you. So he felt it was appropriate to include those things in there, even if they're under appeal.
Commissioner Randolph?
You mentioned that the ZEO staff has some suggested changes. Those haven't been incorporated yet, I assume?
No, this is strictly a reorganization, adding tables where tables are appropriate, reordering the zoning regulations. And so we haven't incorporated those. And, I hope that, I really would like our zoning enforcement staff to come before you to explain some of the changes that they'd like in their own words and so that you can understand what it is that they are looking for. And hopefully you'll agree.
So as a matter of course, like the subdivision regulations still exist as a separate document.
That's correct.
Is there an intention to kind of marry this or eventually have it all in one set of regulations?
I don't think so. I think more normally subdivision regulations live on their own. And, so I have not seen in a lot of, I have not, in my personal experience in the municipalities that I've had experience with, they tend to be separate documents. I don't know if, John, you want to speak to that as well?
That's the way I've seen them.
Yeah.
Not seen them as one document, except in a city. In a city you've had.
So in Bridgeport, it's all one document. It's just a separate section. So I find it's easier because it's not something else to look for.
Yeah, towns and smaller municipalities are usually separate. Cities.
Is there enough of a cross-referencing where putting them together makes sense, or I think they live on their own anyways?
Yeah, I mean, I can check. I mean, I can certainly check with Attorney Pierce if he feels that that's appropriate, and we can handle that in phase 2 if he feels that that's something that we should consider.
Sure. Minimally, maybe it's just a similar reformat down the line too. It might be phase 3.
Is there related to that? Is there any, because I've seen cities usually have them in one spot, but I usually see them separate. But are there any things in the subdivision ordinances that have changed that we should bring into the zoning ordinance? Because subdivision is kind of usually written specifically for subdivisions, and we don't have a lot of those. But often we need to refer to the subdivision because it addresses issues that aren't in the zoning ordinance.
If you can think of specific examples, we're happy to look into them.
Yeah, I think
that could be food for thought later too. I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that one of the things that we need to have an extensive conversation with our engineering department about is some of the stormwater questions that have come up. And, how deeply we get into adding a stormwater section within our regulations. I'm not a licensed engineer. I don't intend to become a licensed engineer anytime in my future career, nor John, as he's waving, going, no, no, no. So, I think that will be a section that I think makes sense to add and refer to, just like we do in our other sections, the tree warden. Because, we are very fortunate that we have an engineering department in town. Not all municipalities have that. So we need to, I think it makes sense to take some of the stormwater things that are within the subdivision regs, make sure that they're implicit within our zoning regulations, but then understand the relationship between our engineering department, who are the licensed professionals who can review that. But making sure that we have enough information that provides us with the infrastructure that we want as part of the overall site plan review.
So, so for sidewalks, trees, the streetscape information, that's often in the subdivision. Are we gonna? Maybe that, as Commissioner Noonan was saying, maybe we should look at pulling that in at some point.
We certainly can be more specific about individual project design. I know one of the things that's come up as we've been talking about, do we expand the center design district or another transition district or a gateway district, is the fact that only the center design district and the neighborhood design district come with architectural standards. And I would say site context standards, right? So I do think that that's something that we can also pull into our regulations, as long as it's pretty clear. I mean, if you're gonna provide flexibility, you also almost have to provide very specific guidance as to how you give that flexibility as well.
Other questions?
I don't know if Attorney Braun joined. Did Attorney Braun join?
She did not come on, no.
Okay.
I texted her, so she got.
I think this is a huge improvement and I know a lot of work went into this, so thank you for getting this to this point. I think it's fantastic. One minor suggestion I have. I think one of the great things about this new format is the way pieces of it link to other pieces of it. And click and you get to another part. I'm not sure it's clear that that functions in place. I'm not sure the way to address that, but we happen to know because we've talked about it. But I think for one thing I've heard from folks is if you're just a member of the public, a lot of this stuff is hard to follow. If you just stumble onto the website and the zoning regulations and you're looking through this, I don't think it's necessarily going to be apparent that you can click on one piece and it'll take you to another. So
I thought it'd have like blue hyperlinks or something, doesn't? That's always what I see.
at least on my computer, they
It
don't show.
actually doesn't. So,
Yeah, it's
so
like
I
just
think,
sort of
I think we can
hover over.
absolutely develop a user's guide.
I just kind of assumed that it would be, okay, okay.
Yeah, I think we can actually write up a user's guide for how to use the new zoning regulations.
That's fine too, yeah.
And I think what we can also do is work with our first selectman's office to provide that information through the first selectman's newsletter when that comes out, when you guys are ready to adopt.
Makes sense.
Just curious how the process, like, are we able to adopt these tonight? Do we have to?
So this is a public hearing tonight, so I'm gonna, I assume we're done, I'm gonna close, I'll open it to public comment. I'll close I obviously nobody's here in person, I'll ask about anybody joining us remotely, doesn't look like there's anybody. Once we close the hearing, it'll come up for a vote whenever
We could do it at the next meeting. It's
because it's pretty,
the commission's discretion, yeah,
yeah,
it's discretion.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, where's the affordability component for the various districts or like the center design district?
So right now, those are embedded within those particular sections.
Okay, because I can't
So,
find it.
Yeah, so that makes a good point. So when we go to the supplemental standards, we probably should have that as a supplemental standard that stands on its own. So that, when somebody looks at a project, they go, oh, what's the affordability requirement in Fairfield? And it's right there.
So is it in the center, that 20% we passed?
Yes.
I'm just gonna find it.
No, it should be in there, in the center design district.
While you look, or while you guys are looking, anything else, or can we, as I said, Ms. Harrigan, I assume you're done?
Yes.
Okay. While you're looking, I'll just go through the rigor of this process. All right, I'll close the initial presentation portion of the application. We've seen this in other planning sessions, so this is not anything new to us. Any member of the public wish to be heard in this application? There's nobody joining us in person. Mr. Mullen, anybody remote?
No, Mr. Chairman, there is not.
All right, so I'll just say it for the record. If anybody's joining us remotely, please sign in the chat or raise your digital hand using that function. Raise your hand at the bottom of the computer screen. Any member of the public wish to be heard in this application? Again, nobody's here in person, but again, anybody joining remotely, please sign in the chat or raise your digital hand to get our attention. Not hearing anybody, not seeing anybody, I'll close the public comment portion. Nothing further, I assume, Ms. Harrigan?
Yep.
Anything further, anybody? Get that answer, obviously. So I'll close the hearing on this application. Thank you. Thank you. This is, I know this is a lot of work and we're finally getting to it, so. The end is near in a lot of ways, so.
Vast improvement.
Yes, it is. So
Like,
good
where it
job.
is.
Thank
I
you
know
for
it's
that.
in here somewhere. I did see it before. Do you want to go ahead and adjourn?
Yes, I'm sorry. I ended it, but I'll adjourn the meeting. Excuse me.
Recording stopped.
Thank you.
Do you
Sorry.
want to talk about?